The fog clung to the Thames like a shroud, thick and unyielding, turning the south bank into a labyrinth of shadows under the gas lamp's feeble glow. Sherlock Holmes staggered from the hansom cab, his Inverness cape sodden and heavy, the bitter chill seeping through his veins like an old enemy. His hands trembled, not from the autumn wind whipping off the river, but from the cocaine's fading fire in his blood. 41 years of chasing shadows had led to this. Another night, another puzzle, but this one gnawed deeper, whispering of impossibilities that even his razor mind struggled to slice. He paused at the rusted iron gates of Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens, the once grand pleasure ground now a derelict whisper of its 18th century glory. Overgrown ivy choked the entrance, and the air hummed with the distant clatter of horse-drawn omnibuses on Westminster Bridge Road. Big Ben tolled 11, its mournful chime muffled by the mist. Holmes's grey eyes, sharp as flint despite the haze in his skull, fixed on the arch sign, reopened for the season's revels. Lies, all of it. No revels here. Only rumours of the 63rd soul swallowed by the infamous hedge maze at its heart. Footsteps splashed behind him, steady despite the limp. Dr. John Watson emerged from the gloom, his tweed suit plastered to his stocky frame, moustache beaded with rain. Kind blue eyes scanned Holmes with that familiar mix of concern and resolve. "Holmes, you look like death warmed over. Are you sure about this? The police have sealed it off. Inspector Lestrade's men are inside, and they've got no leads after 62 others." Holmes waved a dismissive hand, his aquiline nose twitching at the scent of damp earth and decay rising from the grounds. The cocaine ebbed, leaving a void that clawed at his resolve. He needed this, the intellectual inferno, to burn away the boredom that drove the needle's bite. Boredom was his true adversary, the demon that turned Cambridge's prodigy into London's spectral detective. Facts first, Watson. 63 vanishings in a maze no larger than 2 acres. No bodies, no cries for help, no traces on the paths. The papers call it the devil's whim, a supernatural jest. But I smell human cunning, reeking of opium smoke and desperation. They pushed through the gates, the hinges screeching like a banshee's wail. The gardens unfolded in ruin. Shattered pavilions sagged under vines, their rotundas once alive with fireworks and orchestras now silent tombs. Fairy lights strung in forgotten festoons swayed ghostly in the breeze, casting erratic shadows that danced like lost souls. Holmes's boots crunched on gravel paths, lined with wilted rosebeds, their thorns snagging at his trousers like accusatory fingers. Ahead loomed the maze, a colossal hedge labyrinth towering 12 feet high, its yew-walls impenetrable black in the fog. Lanterns hung from posts at the entrance, flames guttering low, illuminating a plaque. "Enter if you dare, the heart of Vauxhall's enchantment." Fresh chalk marks circled the threshold where the latest victim, a young seamstress named Elias Crowe, had stepped in alone after midnight. Her escort waited here, drunk and belligerent, now sobering in a Lambeth cell. Watson shivered, pulling his collar higher. "This place gives me the creeps, Holmes. Built in 1732 for King George, they say. Hosted Mozart as a boy, royalty in domino masks. But the maze, locals whisper it shifts, paths rearranging under moonlight. Nonsense, of course." Holmes knelt, gaunt fingers tracing the gravel. No drag marks, no scuffle. Eliza's reticule lay abandoned 10 feet in, clasp undone, a single glove beside it. He lifted the glove, silk, monogrammed EC, still warm. No, imagination. Fueled by the drug's afterglow. His mind raced, cataloguing, footprints mismatched, one set leading in, none out. The hedges bore no cuts, no ladder scars. Impossible. Inspector Lestrade burst from a side path, his bulldog face ruddy under a bowler hat, pipe clenched in yellowed teeth. "Holmes, Scotland Yard's had enough of your theatrics. This ain't a game. These folk are gone, poof, like smoke. Public panic's brewing. Home Secretary's breathing down my neck. Give me 10 minutes uninterrupted, Lestrade. Or shall I wire Mycroft and let the Diogenes Club unravel your bungled inquiry?" The inspector grumbled, but stepped aside, his constables parting like the Red Sea. Holmes straightened, the familiar thrill igniting, a puzzle defying physics, logic, the very laws of space. Yet beneath it, a tremor, his own unravelling. 3 days without a case, and the 7% solution had claimed another afternoon in Baker Street's dim armchair. Mrs. Hudson's worried glances, Watson's silent pleas, they chipped at his armour. Was this the fall, the genius reduced to a wraith chasing vapours? They entered the maze mouth, the hedges closing like jaws. The air grew thicker, laced with boxwood sap and something sweeter. Jasmine, out of season. Paths forked immediately, left to a dead end marked by a Cupid statue, moss-eaten and eyeless, right curving into obscurity. Holmes strode centre, Watson close, revolver bulging in his pocket. "Listen," Holmes said, voice low and clipped, his curly dark hair matted under the deerstalker. "The victims, clerks, housemaids, the Viscount's son, even that missionary from Stepney, all entered alone or in pairs post-midnight. No echoes of distress heard by the 20 revellers outside. The maze's layout is fixed. Maps from 1850 confirm it. Yet searches with bloodhounds yield nothing. Air shafts? None sufficient for suffocation. Underground tunnels? Thames clay too unstable." Watson nodded, limping over a route. Perhaps mass hysteria. Or a gang pressing them into white slavery. Opium trades rife here. No. Too precise. Too silent. Holmes paused at a junction, inhaling deeply. The cocaine whispered temptations, another syringe in his kit, hidden in the cape lining. Focus faltered, visions flickered, Cambridge lectures blurring into Afghan battlefields he'd never seen, Watson's war scars mirroring his own invisible wounds. A rustle overhead, wind, or eyes watching from the trimmed heights. Holmes snapped alert, scaling a low branch with simian grace. From above, the maze sprawled like a green minotaur's lair, paths a tangle defying aerial surveys. No open centres, no breaks, but there a flicker deep in, unnatural light pulsing like a heartbeat. "Watson, mark this path. Something's alive in here." They pressed on, the fog condensing on leaves to drip like tears. Holmes's mind whirled, geometry first. If paths totaled 1 mile, traversable in 15 minutes, why no exits? Mirrors? No reflections reported. Drugs in the air? Tests negative. His pulse quickened. Not fear, but hunger for truth. Yet the void inside yawned wider. Redemption seemed a myth for lesser men. Voices echoed faintly. Laughter. From the gardens beyond or trapped echoes? Watson gripped his arm. Holmes, that seamstress. She was seen arguing with a veiled woman before entering. Lady in crimson, locals say, haunts the gates nightly. Lady Evelyn Thorne, Holmes murmured, name surfacing from society columns. Widow, fortunes murky, patron of this fast reopening. Temptress or key? The path narrowed, walls brushing shoulders. Holmes's lantern beam caught a scrap of fabric snagged on thorn, same silk as the glove. Further in, carved initials on bark, E.C. 1894. Eliza's mark, or older? Suddenly the ground softened underfoot, mud sucking at boots. No, the path ended in brambles, forcing backtrack. But Holmes swore it forked left moments ago. Trick of the mind, or the maze's malice? "Watson, we've looped. Impossible. A woman's scream pierced the night, raw and close, then silence. Holmes bolted toward it, heart pounding with rare urgency. The cocaine's ghost fueled him, but deeper, a spark of purpose. Who was she? Thorne? Another victim? They rounded a corner into a clearing, empty rotunda. Fountain, dry and leaf-choked. No one. But on the basin's rim, fresh, a lady's handkerchief embroidered with a thorned rose and scrawled in lipstick, "Seek the heart, or join the lost." Holmes pocketed it, eyes blazing. "The game begins, Watson, but at what cost to my soul?" As thunder rumbled over the Thames, the hedges seemed to lean in, hungry for secrets, and in Holmes's pocket, the syringe case burned like a Judas kiss. This story is created by a young creator whose dream is to reach 1,000 subscribers. If you enjoy these tales, subscribing helps more than you know, and he thanks you for it. Mysteries that challenge your mind and reward attention await in the shadows ahead. Holmes turned the delicate handkerchief over in his long fingers. the lipstick scrawl gleaming wet under the lantern's unsteady glow. "Seek the heart, or join the lost." The words twisted like the thorns embroidered along its edge, mocking his precision. Watson peered over his shoulder, breath fogging the chill air, his moustache twitching with unease. "What does it mean, Holmes? A heart, some central chamber in this infernal labyrinth?" "Perhaps. Or a metaphor for folly. The human heart, Watson, leads us into such traps." Holmes folded the cloth away, but its perfume clung, stirring unwelcome memories, not of cases past, but quieter failures, the empty hours when the needle's promise drowned the silence. Rain began to patter on the leaves overhead, turning the rotunda's cracked stones slick. They pressed on, the maze's hedges towering denser now, their branches interlaced like conspirators. Holmes's mind raced, cataloguing anomalies, the fabric scrap matching Elias Crowe's glove, the initials EC that could belong to her or echo some prior victim. 63 souls vanished without trace since the garden's ill-fated reopening 3 weeks prior. Constables dismissed it as hysteria, runaways fleeing debts or shame. But Holmes saw patterns where others saw fog. A fork appeared, left toward a distant gas lamp's flicker, right into deeper shadow. He chose left, boots squelching in mud that hadn't been there before. Watson followed, revolver half drawn, his limp more pronounced on the uneven ground. "This place preys on the mind," he muttered. "Like those Afghan passes, where illusions killed as surely as bullets." Holmes glanced back, noting the strain in his friend's eyes. Watson, ever the anchor, bore scars Holmes could only observe. "Your steadiness shames my distractions. But tonight, we dissect this beast." The path widened into another clearing, this one ringed by crumbling statues, nymphs and satyrs frozen in eternal revelry, moss veiling their stone eyes. At center stood a pedestal, empty save for a plaque, Vauxhall's Heart, 1732, dedicated to pleasures unending. Below, fresh petals scattered like blood drops, wilting in the rain. Holmes knelt, inhaling their cloying sweetness. Opium-laced? No, subtler, like the dens he'd frequented in Limehouse. "Watson, shine the light here." Holmes brushed petals aside, revealing a trapdoor outline in the pedestal base, camouflaged by lichen. He pried at it with his penknife, muscles straining under his cape. Wood splintered, hinges groaned, and it gave way to a black maw descending into earth. A hidden passage. To what? Catacombs? Smuggler's lair? Before Holmes could descend, a rustle erupted from the hedges, soft footfalls, then a silhouette gliding into view. Tall, cloaked in crimson velvet that drank the light, a veiled figure. Lady Evelyn Thorne stepped forward, her emerald eyes glinting through lace, lips curved in amusement. Gentlemen, such late callers. The gardens closed to daylight dreamers, not sleuths. Her voice was velvet over steel, laced with the clipped vowels of Mayfair drawing rooms. Holmes rose slowly, masking his thrill. "Lady Thorne, your patronage revives this relic, yet it devours your guests." She laughed, low and throaty, fanning herself with a lace glove, matching the scrap. "Exaggeration, Mr. Holmes. Fog and frights explain the missing. My maze amuses, it does not imprison." Watson bristled, hand on revolver. 63 souls beg to differ, madam, including Elias Crowe, seamstress from Lambeth Walk. Evelyn's fan paused, eyes narrowing fractionally. Poor Eliza, impulsive girl chasing lovers' quarrels into shadows like so many. She drifted closer, perfume enveloping them, same rosewater as the handkerchief. Holmes noted her porcelain skin, flawless, save a faint scar along her jaw hidden by powder. "You've read the columns, then. Widow's weeds suit me, no? But truths hide deeper than ink. This heart you seek, Vauxhall's pulse, beats for those bold enough." She extended a gloved hand, dropping a single thorned rose onto the pedestal. It rolled toward the trapdoor, vanishing into darkness. "Seek wisely, or the maze seeks you." With that, she melted back into foliage, her laughter trailing like smoke. Holmes lunged after, but hedges barred the way. No gap, no print in mud. Illusion. "Accomplice. Gone like opium smoke," Watson growled. She's the veiled lady the locals whisper of, financier of vice, opium, gambling masked as pleasure. Holmes stared at the trapdoor, pulse hammering not from exertion, but the chase's fire. Evelyn Thorne wove temptation into truth. Her empire, rumours said, funded by Garden's underbelly, secret revels where fortunes and reputations dissolved. Did the maze conceal more than hedges? We descend. Holmes lit a fresh match, dropping it into the hole. Stairs spiraled down, walls damp brick, exhaling musty air. Watson hesitated, thunder crashing above. Holmes, this reeks of trap. Your mind's sharper sober. Recall Baker Street, the 7% solution tempting? The words stung, unearthing the syringe in his pocket, its weight a siren's call. Holmes met Watson's gaze, seeing not judgment but plea. I recall everything, old friend, and tonight deduction trumps haze. They descended, lantern casting grotesque shadows, rat scurry, drip of water. Stairs ended in a tunnel, arched like catacombs, lined with niches holding faded playbills. Vauxhall spectacles of yore, fireworks and singers lost to time. Air thickened, sweet with decay. Voices ahead, murmurs, feminine giggles. Holmes extinguished the light, creeping forward. A chamber opened. Candle lit, velvet cushions strewn, remnants of a feast, wine stains, scattered cards. Midway, a great covered pit yawned, bottomless black. Over it, etched into floor, the heart. Watson whispered, Thorne's doing. A den for her ilk. Holmes examined a cushion. Hairpin. Eliza's auburn curl caught in it, fresh, but no bodies, no struggle. Instead, on wall murals, revelers entering maze, faces ecstatic, then fading into mist. Painted recently, artist's hand unsteady. A groan echoed from the pit. Human. Wind. Holmes leaned over, peering down. Nothing but echo. Suddenly the grate rattled, chains clinking below. Watson yanked him back as stone dust sifted. Upstairs, hedges shifted, footsteps converging. They're coming. Holmes pocketed the hairpin, mind whirling. Thorne toys with us. The maze lives, Watson. Mirrors, passages, drugs, or darker design. They retreated up, emerging to pounding rain. The pedestal's trapdoor sealed seamless now, petals gone. Maze paths rearranged, left fork vanished, forcing right into thornier depths. Hours blurred, dead ends. False echoes. Holmes's head throbbed, cocaine craving sharpening senses to pain. Watson's limp worsened, sweat beading despite cold. Dawn greyed the sky when they stumbled from the gates, gas lamps paling. Lestrade waited, pipe clenched, face grim. Holmes! Yards combed it thrice, no vanishes tonight, but a body washed up Thames mudflats. Eliza Croft, drowned, they say, maze mark on her palm. Thorned heart. Holmes froze, hairpin burning in pocket. Not drowned, delivered. Thorne's warning manifests. As carriage rattled toward Baker Street, Holmes stared at passing Thames, fog coiling like serpents. 63, now confirmed dead. His detachment cracked. Personal now. The syringe whispered relief, but Watson's steady presence held it at bay. Yet deeper gnawed doubt. Reason alone against this malice? Vauxhall's heart pulsed secrets defying logic, pulling him toward abyss. And Thorne watched, her rose thorn lodged in his soul. Fog thickened as they neared home. But Holmes sensed eyes upon them, from shadowed alleys, or the maze's endless gaze. The true vanishing had just begun. Baker Street greeted them with the familiar glow of Mrs. Hudson's lamps cutting through the fog like hesitant beacons. Holmes descended the carriage first, his Inverness cape sodden and heavy, each step echoing the relentless clatter of hooves fading into the night. Watson followed, his limp more pronounced now, the chill seeping into his bones like an unwelcome guest. The door creaked open before they knocked. Mrs. Hudson's face pale in the threshold light, her apron twisted in worry-knotted hands. Gentlemen, thank heavens. Inspector Lestrade's been pacing the sitting room since sunset. Says it's urgent. Holmes brushed past without a word, shedding his cape on the hook, the droplets pooling on the Persian rug. The air inside hung thick with pipe smoke and the faint, acrid tang of cocaine residue from his earlier lapses. Watson nodded gratefully to Mrs. Hudson, murmuring assurances as he hung his hat. But Holmes's mind was already dissecting the night's harvest. The hairpin with Eliza Croft's auburn curl, the thorned heart etched on her palm, the murals whispering of ecstatic vanishings. Thorne's game deepened, layers upon illusions. Lestrade rose from Holmes's armchair as they entered, his bulldog face etched deeper with fatigue, bowler hat clutched like a talisman. "Holmes, at last. We've got trouble piling faster than Thames silt. That body, Eliza Croft, was no accident. Coroner's report, lungs dry as dust, no water in them. She didn't drown, she suffocated. And get this, same thorned heart on 3 more washed up this week. All women, all last seen at Vauxhall's reopening gala." Holmes's grey eyes sharpened, striding to the mantel where his syringe lay half concealed behind chemical vials. He snatched the hairpin from his pocket, holding it to the gaslight. "See here, Lestrade. The curl matches the descriptions. Fresh, not faded. She was alive in that pit mere hours ago." Watson sank into his own chair, rubbing his thigh against the old Afghan ache. "But how? We heard nothing, no screams, no pleas." Lestrade snorted, relighting his pipe. "Drugs, maybe. Opium haze in those gardens thick as the fog. Thorne's lot peddles it wholesale. But 63 gone, Holmes. Families besieging Scotland Yard daily. Press calling it the Maze Devil. You saw it tonight, paths shifting like living things." Holmes paced, fingers steepled, the syringe's silver gleam pulling at him like a siren's call. His body screamed for the 7% solution, the sharp clarity it promised amid the fog of doubt. Reason faltered tonight. The maze defied geometry, echoes mocking physics. What if Thorne's empire hid not mere crime, but something primal, ancient? Vauxhall's history whispered of darker pleasures. Satanic revels in the 1700s, bodies dumped in the river under moonless skies. He paused at the window, parting curtains to peer into the alley below. Shadows writhed unnaturally, a figure lingering too long by the lamp-post. Hat low, coat collar up. Thorne's spy? Or paranoia born of withdrawal? Watson watched him closely, concern etching lines around his blue eyes. "Holmes, you've pushed too far without rest. Let me fetch some tea." "No." Holmes whirled, voice edged like a scalpel. "Tea won't unravel this. Observe, Watson. The hairpin's clasp bears a monogram. E.T. Evelyn Thorne herself. She's not financier, she's architect." Lestrade grunted approval, but Holmes's gaze drifted inward, the room blurring. A flashback seized him. Cambridge days, 20 years past, when pure intellect reigned unchallenged. No cocaine then, just the thrill of theorems proving order in chaos. But boredom crept in post-cases, voids filled by needle pricks. Moriarty's shadow accelerated it, each victory hollower. Now this maze mocked his supremacy. Vanishings without trace, victims delivered like macabre gifts. He needed the hit, just once to sharpen the edges. His hand trembled toward the syringe. Watson rose, steadying voice cutting through. "Sherlock, listen. This case. It's consuming you, like the cocaine. You've glimpsed hell tonight. Don't invite it home." Holmes froze, fingers inches from the case. Watson's words pierced deeper than Thorne's. His companion, ever the anchor, ex-soldier, healer, the one soul seeing past the genius to the man fraying at seams. For a breath, vulnerability surfaced. What if reason failed utterly? What grace lay beyond logic's cold grasp? Lestrade cleared his throat, oblivious. "We've a witness, Holmes. Old groundskeeper Jacob Hale, tended Vauxhall since boyhood, says the maze has hearts. Hidden chambers, like the one you found. Built by the original owner. Lord Blackwood, rumoured occultist. Revellers entered for forbidden rites, never all returned. Jacob Hale." Holmes pocketed the syringe unopened, resolve hardening. "Fetch him. Dawn breaks soon. We'll question at the yard." But as Lestrade departed, a knock rattled the door, sharp, insistent. Mrs. Hudson's voice floated up, muffled. "Telegram for Mr. Holmes, urgent, from Lambeth." Holmes snatched it, unfolding in lamplight. Scrawled words, "Curiosity kills Labyrinth explorers. Return hairpin or join the 64, E.T." Thorne. She knew. The curl, the pit, monitored. His pulse quickened, not fear, but exhilaration laced with dread. The game elevated, personal gauntlet thrown. Watson peered over his shoulder. Burn it. She's baiting you. No. Holmes crumpled it. Flames devouring paper in the grate. Bait accepted. But first hail. Sleep evaded them. Holmes sketched maze maps from memory, paths twisting impossibly, marking false echoes, predicting shifts. Watson dozed fitfully, revolver near. By 6 a.m., hansom cab bore them to Scotland Yard, fog lifting to reveal London's underbelly. Beggars huddled in doorways, factory whistles piercing dawn. Hale waited in interrogation room, bent man of 70. Whiskers white as Thames foam, eyes milky with age yet sharp. Earthy smell clung to him, soil and decay. Mr. Holmes, sir, maze ain't natural. Blackwood cursed it, they say. Thorned heart. Mark of the old gods. Enter seeking ecstasy, find oblivion. Drugs. Aye, but more. Mirrors multiply you, whispers promise delights. Then walls close. Seen folk wander in laughing, emerge, changed, or not at all. Holmes leaned forward, voice low. Changed how? Hale shuddered, fingers tracing air, eyes hollow, babbling of gardens eternal, feasts unending. Lady Thorne? She knows the hearts. Unlocked one last full moon. Heard screams then, feminine, pleading. Watson exchanged glances with Holmes. Thorne's empire, opium-fueled rites, maze-trapping souls for profit or darker hunger. Describe the hearts precisely. Hale sketched on slate. Chambers like yours, sir. 5 total. Central 1, the heart of Vauxhall. Pedestal there, roses bloom unnatural. Step on it wrong. Holmes's mind raced. The pit connected? Tunnels beneath Thames? Before Hale answered, door burst open. Lestrade, breathless. Another body, Holmes. Fresh. Maze gates palm-marked, a note pinned to her dress. Sherlock Holmes next. Eliza Croft's sister, Mary. Vanished gala night. Thorne escalates. Holmes stood, cape swirling. To Vauxhall. Now. Cab raced south, Thames gleaming mockingly. Holmes gripped the hairpin, Watson's hand on revolver. Clarity struck. This ward not just crime, but his soul. Cocaine tempted escape. Thorne tempted abyss. Yet Watson's faith in him, unwavering, stirred something dormant. Perhaps reason needed allies. Loyalty. Perhaps even higher order. Gates loomed, ajar. Fresh petals scattered path. Inside, hedges rustled welcome. But Holmes paused, sensing shift. The maze hungered anew. They stepped in, fog coiling feet. Distant laughter echoed, ghostly, inviting. Thorne waited deeper, her web tightening. As Thorne snagged Holmes's sleeve, drawing first blood, he whispered to Watson, "This ends today, or consumes us." But laughter grew, petals leading false. 64 loomed. Comment if you've known someone who found their way back. Fog clung to their ankles like a living shroud as Holmes and Watson plunged deeper into the Vauxhall maze, the iron gates clanging shut behind them with a finality that echoed off the ancient hedges. Thorns tugged at Holmes's Inverness cape, drawing thin lines of blood that welled warm against his skin, a sharp reminder of vulnerability he rarely acknowledged. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and overripe roses, petals carpeting the path in deceptive softness, leading them onward like siren calls. Watson gripped his revolver tighter, his limp more pronounced on the uneven gravel, blue eyes scanning the towering walls of yew that seemed to shift in the gaslight's feeble glow. Holmes, ahead by a step, moved with predatory grace, his hawkish profile etched in determination, grey eyes dissecting every shadow. Yet beneath that steel resolve, a tremor stirred. The cocaine vial in his pocket burned like a forbidden ember, whispering promises of clarity amid the chaos. He had sworn off it after the last case's haze, but here, in this labyrinth born of forgotten pleasures, the old hunger gnawed. Laughter bubbled up again, closer now, feminine and mocking, threading through the branches like smoke. It pulled them left, then right, the paths forking endlessly. Holmes paused at a junction, kneeling to examine a scatter of petals crushed underfoot. Fresh blood mingled with them, not his own, darker, congealing. Mary Crofts perhaps dragged this way mere hours ago. This way, he murmured to Watson, voice a razor edge. The hearts Hale described, follow the roses. They pressed on, the maze constricting. Hedges whispering secrets in the wind. Holmes's mind raced, piecing fragments. The 5 chambers, the central heart of Vauxhall, tunnels snaking beneath the Thames like veins to the city's underbelly. Lady Thorne's empire thrived here, opium dreams morphing into nightmares, souls ensnared not by drugs alone but by something primal, ancient. Blackwood's curse, Hale had called it, thorned heart of old gods. Superstition, Holmes scoffed inwardly, yet the air hummed with unnatural weight, pressing on his chest. A mirror glinted ahead, half obscured by vines, reflecting their forms distorted. Holmes taller, gaunt cheeks hollowed to skeletal, eyes fever-bright. Watson appeared battle-scarred anew, limp, exaggerated. The detective touched the glass, cool and slick, and for a heartbeat his reflection smiled independently, lips curling in invitation. Come, it seemed to say, indulge, solve nothing, dissolve. He recoiled, shaking off the illusion, but Watson saw the flicker in his friend's gaze. Steady on, Holmes. It's tricks of light, nothing more. Nothing more. Holmes nodded curtly, but doubt seeded. His body ached for the needle's kiss, the euphoria that sharpened senses beyond mortal limits. Watson's loyalty anchored him, a steadfast presence reminding him of battles shared, wounds dressed in Afghan tents under starlit skies. Yet here, loyalty felt fragile against the maze's pull. The path narrowed, forcing them shoulder to shoulder, thorns raking sleeves. Laughter swelled, resolving into voices, dozens, overlapping in ecstatic chorus. Feasts eternal, they crooned, delights unending. Holmes clamped hands over ears, but the sound burrowed inward, stirring memories, Cambridge revels, cocaine-fueled deductions that bordered genius and madness. He stumbled, knee sinking into petal-soft mud that clung like tar. Watson hauled him up, grip firm on his arm. Talk to me, old chap. What's it showing you? Visions, Holmes admitted through gritted teeth. Mirrors multiplying errors. My errors. The 7% solution, calling me back. Watson's mustache twitched in concern, kind eyes holding steady. You've beaten it before. Beat this too. For the 63. For Mary. They emerged into a clearing, gas lamps flickering on a pedestal wreathed in unnatural roses, blooming midnight black, despite the chill autumn fog. The first heart chamber, Holmes breathed, pulse quickening. Central dais, just as Hale sketched. He circled it warily, magnifying glass sweeping for mechanisms. Footprints circled it, delicate, healed, Lady Thorne's. And there, etched in the stone base, a thorned heart, pulsing faintly as if alive, veins of quartz glowing. Watson shone his lantern closer. Look, scratches, fresh. Someone clawed to escape. Holmes traced them, mind alight. Pressure plate. Step wrong. Floor drops to pits below. Tunnels to river. Bodies discarded like refuse. Thorne's profit. Entrance fees. Opium sales. Then Vanishings blamed on folly. But the note, personal. She knows we're here. A rustle overhead. They spun as petals rained, laughter exploding into screams, real ones feminine, raw with terror. From the next hedge. Mary, Watson called, revolver raised. They charged the archway, maze shifting greedily, paths realigning behind. Holmes's sleeve tore free, thorn embedded deep, pain lancing white-hot. Ignore it, he snarled to himself, but blood dripped, staining petals crimson carnival. Deeper in, mirrors lined the walls, infinite reflections mocking their pursuit. Holmes saw himself in each, the addict slumped in Baker Street chairs, violins silent, the detective failing Moriarty's web, the man untouched by faith or folly, adrift in reason's cold sea. Watson's reflections fared no better, ghosts of Afghan dead trailing him, accusing eyes for survivors' guilt. Break through, Holmes urged, shattering a pane with his cane. Glass tinkled like chimes, revealing brick behind, solid, unyielding. Illusions stacked. Then a figure emerged from fog ahead. Lady Evelyn Thorne, raven hair unbound, emerald eyes gleaming under veiled hat, corseted gown muddied but regal. She held a lantern, crimson lips curving in amusement. "Gentlemen, at last. Come for the show?" Holmes stepped forward, ignoring the vial siren song in his pocket. "Your game ends, Lady Thorne. Mary's body at the gates, your mark on her palm. The hearts, the pits, explain." She laughed, low and throaty, circling the pedestal like a panther. "Explain?" Vauxhall's pleasures were always double-edged. The maze devours the unworthy. Opium fools seeking paradise. 63 fools, now 64. You, Mr. Holmes. Clever enough to navigate, or hungry enough to join them. Watson's revolver steadied. Step aside, Lestrade's en route. Her gaze flicked to Watson, dismissive. The good doctor, playing guard dog. But Sherlock, I see it in your eyes. The thrill. Cocaine's pale shadow here. Eternal highs, no crash. Step onto the heart. Feel it. Temptation coiled, mirrors amplifying her words. Holmes's hand twitched toward his pocket, vial's shape familiar comfort. Reason warred with ache, Watson's presence a lifeline, stirring dormant warmth, friendship as grace, unearned yet given. "No," he rasped, voice cracking, "your empire crumbles. The tunnels, Thames currents carry evidence. Blackwood's curse, your invention for profit." Thorne's facade slipped, eyes flashing fury. Curse enough. Full moon unlocked the true heart. Souls fuel it now. Mary screamed your name, begging rescue. Too late. She dashed into shadows, lantern swinging, petals swirling in wake. Holmes lunged after, but the pedestal hummed, dais cracking open, yawning pit below, stench of river rot rising. Watson yanked him back. Trap. They teetered, fog thickening, laughter returning triumphant. Thorne's trail vanished, maze realigning. Holmes slumped against hedge, thornwound throbbing, vial heavy as lead. The struggle clawed deeper, not just Thorne's web, but his own demons, mirrored infinite. Watson bandaged the cut swiftly, hands steady. "We're not done, but Holmes—" "If you need—" "I know." Holmes cut in softly, meeting his friend's gaze. "Thank you, John, for seeing when I don't." Rustles closed in from all sides. Thorne's voice echoed, "Choose your path, detective. Reason or revelation?" As hedges converged, a new whisper slithered. Not laughter, but a child's cry, faint from the central heart. 64 souls hungered, and Holmes's resolve frayed at the edges, the vial calling louder than ever. They pushed on, unaware the maze had already marked them both. The fog clung to the hedges like a shroud, thickening with every labored breath as Holmes and Watson pressed deeper into the Vauxhall maze. The child's cry echoed erratically, now a sob, now a wail, pulling them toward the rumored heart of the labyrinth, where gas lamps from the old pleasure gardens flickered like dying stars through the overgrowth. Thorns snagged at Holmes's Inverness cape, drawing fresh beads of blood that mingled with the sweat beading on his brow. His thorn wound pulsed, a hot reminder of Thorne's parting taunt, but it was the weight in his pocket that truly burned, the vial of cocaine, its promise a siren's call amid the disorientation. "John, listen," Holmes murmured, halting at a fork where mirrors tilted at impossible angles, reflecting infinite versions of themselves, gaunt, limping, fractured men lost in verdant hell. The cry came from the left path, faint but insistent, like a soul clawing from the earth. Watson nodded, revolver still drawn, his limp more pronounced on the uneven gravel. "It could be a lure, Sherlock. Thorne's games, mirrors, whispers, that pit. She's toying with us, turning the maze against our minds." "Indeed," Holmes replied, his voice a threadbare whisper, "but inaction condemns another. 64 now, if her count holds." We proceed. They veered left, the hedges whispering secrets in the breeze off the Thames, rotted wood, distant barge horns, the metallic tang of river mud seeping through cracks in the ancient paths. Holmes's mind raced, piecing fragments. The garden's derelict reopening under Thorne's financing, the full moon's alignment with tidal locks beneath, Blackwood's fabricated curse masking engineered traps. Yet the mirrors mocked his logic, showing not just multiplicity, but monstrosity. One reflection of himself with eyes hollowed by the needle, Another Watson bleeding from Afghan sands, screaming silently. A rustle ahead sharpened their focus. The path widened into a clearing ringed by warped statues, nymphs and satyrs from Vauxhall's heyday, their stone faces eroded into grotesque leers. At center, a crumbling fountain bubbled brackish water, and there, huddled against its rim, sat the source of the cry. A girl no older than 10, rags clinging to her thin frame, face streaked with dirt and tears. Her eyes, wide and haunted, fixed on them. "Help," she whimpered as they approached, voice cracking like dry leaves. "The lady said you'd come, but the heart. It eats." Holmes knelt swiftly, scanning her for injury. Bruises on wrists, suggestive of bindings, no blood. "Child, your name? How did you come here?" "Mary," she sniffled, glancing over her shoulder at the encircling hedges. "Like the others. Funfair, lights, sweets. Then the maze pulled us in. Lady Thorne promised prizes at the center, but mirrors laughed, ground shook. Friends gone, swallowed." Watson's face softened, kneeling beside her despite the ache in his leg. "Poor lamb. You're safe now. We'll get you out back to your family." Holmes's grey eyes narrowed, probing. "Thorne spoke of you screaming my name. Was it so?" Mary shrank back, fingers twisting her hem. "Yes, mister, in the dream mirror. You chased shadows, needle in hand. Said reason fails, join the endless game. Then darkness." The words struck like a lancet. Holmes's hand drifted unconsciously to his pocket, fingers brushing glass. A dream? Or precognition woven into Thorne's illusions? Drugs in the air? Hypnotic suggestions? His pulse quickened, the old hunger surging, cocaine's clarity a false god tempting him to pierce the veil. Watson noticed his blue eyes steady. Sherlock. "Not now," Holmes snapped, sharper than intended, rising abruptly. "She's bait, John. Genuine fear, but planted. Note the fountain. Water's flow defies gravity, slight current from below. Tunnels again." Mary scrambled up, clutching his sleeve. "No, please. It's coming." The heart beats louder at moonrise. "Listen." A low thrum vibrated through the ground like a distant engine or something organic, pulsing in time with Holmes's temples. Petals, blackened rose petals from nowhere, drifted on the wind, circling the fountain. The statue's eyes seemed to gleam, catching faint moonlight piercing the fog. "Run!" Mary cried, bolting toward a gap in the hedges. Holmes lunged after, Watson covering, but the ground heaved. Cracks spiderwebbed the gravel, fountain exploding upward in a geyser of foul water. From the chasm rose a metallic gleam, a great covered shaft, wide as a carriage, exhaling Thames rot and something sweeter, cloying like opium smoke. Thorne's voice slithered from hidden speakers, or perhaps the mirrors themselves. "Clever deduction, mister. Holmes? But the child knows the price. Mary's one of mine. Orphans fed to the works. Fuel for the wheel." Mary froze at the gap, turning with a sly smile that transformed her innocent face into miniature malice. Not real tears, Holmes realized too late, her eyes now emerald-flecked like thorns. "Traitor!" Watson roared, firing at the grate. Sparks flew, but the thrum intensified. Holmes grabbed Mary's arm, but she twisted free, laughing. A child's giggle warped adult. "Too late, detective. The heart hungers your doubt." Hedges surged inward, branches lashing like whips. Holmes shoved Watson aside as thorns raked his arm, tearing cape and flesh. They stumbled back, Mary vanishing into the crush, the gap sealing seamlessly. The chasm yawned wider, revealing gears below, rusted Victorian machinery, conveyor belts slick with slime, bones glimpsed in the gloom. 63. Engineered disappearances for Thorne's empire. Bodies processed, evidence to the river, illusions masking profit from fools paying for thrills. Holmes staggered, blood soaking his sleeve, vision blurring. The vial, salvation in chaos. Just a pinch to sharpen. No. Watson tackled him from the lunge toward the pocket, pinning him against a statue. "Look at me, Sherlock. This is her poison, not yours. Reason, you always say. Fight it." Holmes thrashed, gaunt frame straining, grey eyes wild. John's face swam above, loyal, weathered, the limp a badge of shared battles. Friendship, unyielding grace amid his wreckage. The thrum drowned thought, but Watson's grip anchored. "I can't," Holmes gasped, chest heaving. The ache. "It's everything." "You can," Watson insisted, voice low, fervent. "I've seen you unravel empires on less. Not cocaine, not Thorne's lies. You." The words pierced deeper than thorns. Holmes's hand unclenched, vial untouched. Slowly he nodded, shame and resolve mingling. "Forgive me, old friend." "Always," Watson said, helping him up as the chasm resealed with grinding stone, petals scattering. Silence fell, broken only by distant laughter. But now, faint scratches emanated from the grate's edge, a real plea, muffled, desperate, not illusion. Someone alive below. Holmes straightened, mind clearing like fog burned by dawn. "The tunnels, John. We descend." Thorne's web tightens, but we've a thread, her slip about the wheel. "Full moon rises soon, that's our window." Watson reloaded, face grim. "Lead on, but pace yourself. We're marked, as you said." They pried at the grate with statue fragments, muscles burning, the scratches growing frantic. As iron gave way, a hand, pale, clawing, emerged from black. Not Thorne's game, a survivor's grasp, but as Holmes reached down, the thrum returned stronger, and mirrors flared with Thorne's image, crimson lips curling. "Welcome to the heart, gentlemen. Revelation awaits. Or oblivion." The descent beckoned, Holmes's demons quieted but not slain, the maze's true hunger only beginning to reveal its teeth. The pale hand clamped onto Holmes's, like a vice forged in desperation, slick with subterranean slime, pulling with a ferocity that belied its frailty. Holmes braced against the jagged grate, veins bulging in his neck, every muscle screaming as he heaved. Watson gripped his belt from behind, adding leverage, their breaths sinking in ragged bursts amid the fetid reek of mold and stagnant water rising from below. "Up you come," Holmes grunted through clenched teeth, his wounded arm throbbing anew, blood seeping fresh through the makeshift bandage. The man's torso appeared, emaciated, shirt torn to rags clinging to ribs like wet parchment, followed by legs caked in filth. He collapsed onto the mosaic floor in a heap, gasping, chest heaving as if the very air scorched his lungs. "Water." Rising, the man wheezed, eyes darting wildly to the shadows, mirrors everywhere. "They swallow you whole." Holmes crouched low, grey eyes piercing the dimness lit only by their bullseye lantern's feeble glow. "Name," he said sharply. "How long?" "Elias Blackwood." 2. No, 3 nights. Chased by echoes. Faces in the glass, loved ones, dead ones. Calling you deeper. Paid a shilling for the maze thrill, woke in hell. Watson pressed a flask to Blackwood's lips, steadying his head. Whiskey, not water. "Drink slow. You're in Vauxhall's underbelly, man. Tunnels beneath the old pleasure gardens. The Thames feeds them when the tide turns." Blackwood gulped, colour creeping back into his ashen cheeks, but terror lingered in the twitch of his mouth. Not just tunnels, machinery. Wheels grinding, mirrors shifting on tracks. Lady Thorne's show, they said. Reopening glory. But it's a trap. 63 gone, they whisper. Full moon pulls the river high, floods the veins. I heard screams, bubbling up. Holmes's mind raced, piecing fragments. Thorne's crimson smile, her slip about the wheel, the thrum like colossal pistons. Not magic, mechanism, a hydraulic illusion. Mirrors on rails powered by the Thames's surge, disorienting victims into dead ends or drops. Profit from panic. Opium-laced air to dull resistance. His own cravings echoed it, a mirror to his veins. "We move," Holmes decided, rising with effort, the vial in his pocket, a leaden weight brushing his thigh. "Blackwood, can you walk?" The man nodded shakily, Watson hauling him vertical. "Limp like yours, Doctor." "Afghan." "My wand," Watson replied, a ghost of camaraderie softening his mustache-framed grimace. "Stick close." They descended single file, Holmes first, lanterns swinging to cast elongated shadows on dripping brick walls etched with Victorian graffiti. lovers' initials from 1850s revels, now drowned in moss. The air thickened, chill and briny, carrying faint rot from bloated Thames rats. Steps carved into stone spiraled down, uneven, forcing Holmes to favour his injured arm, pain lancing with each twist. Deeper the thrum intensified, vibrating soles through boots, sinking with Holmes's pulse, a siren's lure tugging at resolve. Cocaine, he thought, would carve clarity from this fog, just enough to map the maze below. No. Watson's words anchored, not her poison, yours. Blackwood stumbled behind, muttering, saw her, Thorne. Raven hair, eyes like emeralds. Laughed as the floor dropped, said the maze chooses who leaves. Liars flourish, Holmes murmured, pausing at a junction where 3 tunnels branched, each identical save for subtle etchings, faded frescoes of nymphs dancing under gaslight. He traced one with fingers, feeling vibration strongest left. This way. The wheels hum. They pressed on, lantern beams slicing gloom, revealing anomalies, shoes abandoned mid-stride, a lady's glove embroidered with initials E.T., crumpled as if clawed off. Holmes pocketed it, certainty hardening, Thorne's taunt, planted misdirection. Minutes stretched, sweat beading Holmes's brow despite the cold, his gaunt frame slick under the Inverness cape. Craving gnawed deeper, visions flickering unbidden. Moriarty's shadow in the cocaine haze of Baker Street boredom, 7% solution as false god. Faith in reason faltering here, where physics bent to human malice. A hiss echoed ahead. Steam? Water? They rounded a bend into a cavernous chamber, vast as a forgotten ballroom, ceiling lost in darkness. Central, the wheel. Massive, iron-spoked like a mill from hell, half submerged in black water lapping ankles. Chains draped it, linked to mirror arrays overhead, poised on rusted rails. Petals? No. Fake roses from the surface maze, wilted mechanisms for scent traps. God preserve us, Watson breathed, revolver drawn, scanning reflections that multiplied their trio into legions. Blackwood froze. That's where they went, over the edge. Holmes waded closer. Water icy, probing the wheel's base. Gears encrusted with silt, but oiled recent. Thorne's handiwork. Full moon in hours. Tide would spin it, flooding tunnels, mirrors converging to crush or drown. 63 souls, funneled here for her empire's veil. Extortion smuggling via the Thames. A grind sounded, stone shifting. Mirrors whirred to life, angling light in blinding shafts. Thorne's voice echoed, multiplied. Clever, Mr. Holmes? But the heart hungers, taste oblivion. In the chaos, Blackwood lunged for a glint on the wheel's rim, a syringe, half full, needle gleaming. Opium, Holmes's bane. For the pain, Blackwood rasped, eyes hollow. She offers it, clears the screams. No. Holmes snatched it, but temptation surged, hand trembling. The solution's promise, euphoria amid madness. His rock bottom flashed, Baker Street collapse, Watson's pleas ignored. Salvation or surrender? Watson lunged, knocking it into the water, splash lost in the roar. Not again, Sherlock. She's the illusion. You're the mind that unmakes them. Holmes recoiled, shame flooding hotter than the rising tide now knee-deep, wheel creaking ominously. Forgive, again. The mirrors locked, forming walls of their own fractured faces, accusing, pleading. Thorne materialized central, gown sodden illusion, lips curling. Join them, detective. Your genius wasted on dry reason. Here, transcendence. Blackwood screamed, swept by a sudden current, vanishing into a side grate. Holmes dove after, but Watson yanked him back as water surged chest high, wheel spinning lazy at first, gears protesting decades of rust. "We retreat!" Watson yelled over the tumult. Holmes nodded, resolve stealing despite the ache. No. Evidence. The glove. Hers. We expose her at the surface. They clawed upstream, lanterns sputtering, reflections mocking their flight. But as they neared the spiral stairs, a new sound. Multiple scratches, frantic chorus from walls. Not one survivor, Dozens. Trapped alive, Thorne's captives fueling the myth. The tide roared higher, Moon's pull merciless. Holmes's demons roared too, but Watson's hand on his shoulder, unyielding grace, pushed back. Upward they climbed, water nipping heels, the wheel's full spin imminent. Yet at the grate's lip, Thorne awaited in flesh, lantern lit, emerald eyes triumphant. You've seen the heart, gentlemen. Now witness its teeth. If this story has gripped you, hit the like button. It helps reach more people who would love this. Her hand extended not a weapon, but a fresh vial, glowing faintly in the gaslight. Yours, Holmes, by name. The true game begins. The gaslight flickered across Lady Evelyn Thorne's porcelain face, casting shadows that danced like spectres in the rising mist from the Thames below. Her emerald eyes locked onto Holmes, unblinking, as if she could peer straight into the hollows where his resolve frayed. The vial dangled from her gloved fingers, its contents swirling with an unnatural luminescence, promising the sharp clarity he craved amid the chaos. Water lapped at their boots now, the tide's relentless push echoing the pulse in his temples. "Sherlock," she murmured, voice silk over steel. "You've glimpsed the machinery beneath my gardens, the wheel that turns on secrets and screams, but this is your key. One drop, and the fog lifts. The vanishings make sense. 63 souls, not lost, but rearranged." Holmes's hand twitched, inches from the glass. His mind raced, cataloguing her, the faint tremor in her wrist, betraying not fear but exhilaration, the scent of laudanum on her breath, mingled with the brine. She wasn't bluffing. This was personalized poison, tuned to his vice. Baker Street echoed in his thoughts, empty syringes, Watson's weary sighs, the violin strings snapping under frantic fingers. Rock bottom wasn't the needle, it was this moment. Teetering on the grate, mirrors below reflecting 1,000 fractured selves. Watson gripped his arm, fingers like iron forged in Afghan fires. "Holmes, don't. She's the tempter in velvet. We've got the glove, the scratches, evidence enough to bury her." Thorne laughed, low and throaty, the sound cutting through the wheel's distant groan as it gathered speed. "Evidence? In my gardens, detective. Truth is what I allow. Those scratches you heard, echoes of the willing, debtors, lovers, fools who sought escape in the maze. The tide claims what the mirrors don't. Join them or walk away blind." Holmes's vision blurred, the vial's glow pulling like a siren's call. He saw it, the perfect deduction, synapses firing pure, unraveling the physics-defying disappearances. 63 gone since the reopening. Patrons lured by fairy lights and forgotten follies, only to vanish in the hedge labyrinth's heart. No bodies, no traces, just whispers of a mechanical underworld, powered by the river's wrath. Blackwood's ravings in the cellars, trapped alive, feeding the myth. But Thorne, she orchestrated it. Her widow's fortune masking a syndicate of smugglers, using the tunnels for opium runs, silencing witnesses with water and illusion. "No," he rasped, snatching his hand back as if burned. "Your game ends tonight. The grate bears your prints, the wheel's gears match your estate's forges. Scotland Yard waits above." Her smile didn't waver. "Then prove it, without this." She crushed the vial under her heel, shards tinkling into the flood, the glow extinguishing like a snuffed hope. Holmes staggered, withdrawal's claws raking his gut, but Watson hauled him upward, through the spiral stairs slick with algae and desperation. The air thickened with fog as they emerged into the maze's moonlit paths. Hedges towering like cathedral spires, gas lamps sputtering in iron cages. They burst onto the South Bank promenade, cobblestone slick underfoot. Horse-drawn hansom cabs clattering past amid the cries of fishmongers winding down. Big Ben tolled 11, its chimes muffled by the perpetual pea super rolling off the Thames. Holmes leaned against a lamppost, breath ragged, the night's chill seeping into his Inverness cape. His body screamed for the fix denied, but his mind sharpened on the puzzle's edges. Watson pressed a hip flask into his palm. Brandy, not oblivion. "Drink. Then we regroup at the sanctuary." Sanctuary. St. Mary's in Lambeth, the old churchyard across from Vauxhall, where yew trees whispered over weathered graves. Not Baker Street's hearth, but a place Watson favoured since his army days, stained glass saints gazing down on wooden pews worn smooth by penitents. Holmes had scoffed at it once, calling faith a crutch for lesser minds. Now, as nausea roiled, he wondered. They slipped inside under cover of darkness. The vicar, a fellow traveller named Elias Blackwood, no relation to the raving survivor, but sharing the haunted eyes, greeting them with a nod. Blackwood had clawed from his own abyss, gin-soaked vicarage, flock abandoned, until the cloth called him back. His speech carried the Thames's rough lilt, words measured like river depths. "Gentlemen," he said, locking the heavy oak door, "the garden's shadow reaches even here. Tea?" Holmes waved it off. Pacing the nave, lantern light playing over effigies of forgotten nobles. "Blackwood survived the wheel," he began, voice low. "Thorne's captives, alive, scratching for release. The maze funnels them to tidal traps. But why 63? A pattern." Watson sank into a pew, moustache drooping with fatigue. Blackwood babbled of mirrors showing sins, Thorne as angel of release. "But it's mechanics, Sherlock. Gears, water, misdirection." Blackwood poured steaming Earl Grey, steam curling like ghosts. "Not mere mechanics, Doctor. I felt it, the pull, like the devil's own bargain. She offers forgetfulness, and the river takes the rest. But Grace. Grace pulls back." Holmes halted, grey eyes piercing the vicar. "Grace. A variable I undervalue. Tell me of the fellow traveller. Another like you." The vicar nodded, face creasing. "Mary Hale, laundress from the bank. Fellow struggler. Opium widow. She saw Thorne drag a man into the hedges last full moon. Comes here for solace. Speaks of the community's watch. Dock workers, tired of the vanishings, forming patrols. But fear grips them. As if summoned, the side door creaked. Mary Hale entered, shawl clutched tight, her lined face pale under greying curls. Mid-40s, hands raw from bleach and grief, eyes holding the maze's endless turns. She'd lost a brother to the gardens years back, motivation burning fierce. Expose the widow before more families shatter. "Mr. Holmes," she whispered, voice threaded with Lambeth grit. "Saw her tonight by the Folly. Not alone. Men in masks, unloading crates from a barge. Opium bound for the tunnels." Holmes's pulse quickened, the brandy steadying him. "Coordinates?" Mary sketched on parish paper. Precise wharf, tide times. But beware the tempter's kin. Her brother, Lord Reginald Thorne, missing these 5 years, rumoured trapped below. Fuels her rage. Lord Reginald. Seed planted earlier. Thorne's brooch engraved RT family, twisted into wreckage. Holmes's arc bent further, not just intellect but empathy for the manipulator's pain. Watson rose, revolver checked. "We raid at dawn, church bells as signal." Blackwood clasped Holmes's shoulder, warmth unyielding. "Pray first, detective. The maze devours the solitary." Holmes met his gaze, cocaine's ghost fading against this quiet insistence. "Perhaps. For clarity." Outside, fog swallowed the spire, but scratches echoed faintly from the river, dozens calling. Thorne's empire teetered, but her final play loomed. As they planned by candlelight, a shadow flitted past the vestry window. Emerald flash, gone. She knew their sanctuary. The wheel turned anew, tide rising with vendettas unspoken. Mary's voice broke the hush. "There's more." In the depths, a chapel ruin, where Thorne communes with ghosts. Reginald's voice, she claims, guides the traps. Holmes leaned forward, mind igniting. A chapel. Faith's perversion at the heart. We descend again, at low tide, but armed with community. Watson's eyes hardened, loyalty fierce. "No more solos, old chap." The night deepened, St. Mary's bells tolling midnight. Holmes felt the shift, from lone genius to thread in a tapestry, vicar, laundress. Companion weaving grace into grit. Yet Thorne's vial lingered in memory, temptation's tide not fully ebbed. Dawn approached, crates waiting, but the maze hungered for one more soul. His? They armed quietly. Watson's Webley, Mary's hidden knife from laundry irons, Blackwood's cross etched with river runes. The Thames whispered promises of revelation or ruin, wheel gears grinding anticipation. Holmes stepped into the fog, cape billowing, resolve tempered by unaccustomed hope. But as the church door sealed behind, a note fluttered to the stones. "Your grace fails, detective. Meet me at the Folly. Alone. Or 64. The trap snapped shut, inner demons aligning with outer peril. Holmes crumpled the note in his fist, the paper's edge slicing his palm like a whisper of warning. The fog off the Thames coiled thicker now, tendrils seeping under St. Mary's vestry door, as if the river itself breathed malice. Dawn was hours away, the raid planned with Watson's revolver and Blackwood's quiet convictions. But this summons, pulled at him like the cocaine vial Thorne had dangled days before, irresistible, laced with peril. He glanced at the sleeping forms, Watson slumped in a pew, revolver across his lap, Mary folding linens with mechanical grace, Blackwood kneeling in prayer, lips moving silently. Community, they called it. Yet solitude had always been his forge, where intellect sharpened to a blade. He slipped out, Inverness cape muffling his steps on the wet cobblestones. The south bank slumbered under gas lamps' sickly glow, horse hooves distant echoes amid the cries of night workers unloading crates at the docks. Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens loomed ahead, its iron gates ajar like a predator's maw, overgrown ivy clawing at the rust. The Folly stood at the perimeter, a crumbling rotunda of Georgian stone, once a trysting spot for lovers, now a haunt for whispers. Moonlight fractured through the dome's broken oculus, casting jagged shadows on moss-slick floors. She was there, Lady Evelyn Thorne, perched on a weathered bench, her crimson gown a bloodstain against the pallor. Emerald eyes caught the light, unblinking, as if she'd woven the fog into her veil. In her gloved hand a silver flask glinted, not laudanum this time, but something sharper, crystalline powder dusting the rim. "You came alone," she murmured. Voice silk over gravel. Wise. Or foolish. 63 souls cry out from the maze, detective. The 64th waits on your choice. Holmes stepped into the circle of light, pipe clenched unlit between his teeth. The air hung heavy with rot, decaying pleasure boats half sunk in the canal, their hulls groaning like the damned. "Your empire crumbles, Lady Thorne." The scratches from the river, the children's voices. Blackwood hears them in prayer. The Metropolitan Police circled closer. She laughed, low and fracturing, rising with a rustle of taffeta. "Empire? This is legacy. Reginald built it, my husband, lost in 1873 when the gardens shuttered. He vanished in the maze chasing debts to the opium lords. I found his voice first echoing in the chapel ruin at the heart. He guides the gears now, the hidden water wheels that shift the hedges. Faith twisted, detective. God abandoned us. Reginald filled the void." Holmes's mind raced, piecing fragments, the brooch engraved R.T., her rage at the crate's gears unearthed by Mary. Reginald Thorne not dead but trapped, or delusion born of grief, the chapel perversion of sanctuary where she communed with ghosts. Yet her eyes held no madness, only a predator's clarity mirroring his own detachment. Delusion or mechanism. "It ends tonight," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his veins, the old hunger stirring, cocaine's clarity calling like a siren's math. She circled him, flask extended, the powder catching light like fallen stars. "Clarity? Taste it." Reginald's gift, distilled from the Thames's secrets. One pinch and you'll hear them too, the lost ones plotting mutiny. Join me. Bend the law as I do, or watch your companions drown in the tide. The temptation coiled in his chest, memory flooding, Baker Street empty, violin silent, needle's kiss dissolving boredom into ecstasy. Blackwood's words echoed faintly, grace for the solitary fails. But reason demanded this, her confession, the maze's heart exposed. He reached, fingers brushing the flask, the grains cold fire on his skin, then a splash from the canal, too deliberate. Thorne's head snapped toward it, mask slipping. Watson's voice cut the fog, muffled but urgent. "Holmes." Betrayal flashed in her eyes, not rage but raw exposure. "You brought them. The wheel turns against you now." She hurled the flask. It shattered at his feet. powder blooming like toxic snow. Holmes coughed, eyes watering, as gears whirred unseen beneath the folly floor, stone slabs shifting with a grind like bones cracking. The rotunda trembled, canal waters surging through grates black and churning. Thorne fled into the shadows, her laughter trailing like smoke. Holmes staggered back, lungs burning from the dust, but the surge pulled at his boots. He clawed for purchase on ivy-choked pillars, mind fracturing between chemical haze and clarity's edge. Voices rose from the water, 63 murmurs, pleading, accusing. Reginald's among them, or her lie preying on his isolation. Watson burst through the gates, revolver drawn, Mary and Blackwood close behind, lanterns swinging like pendulums. The doctor splashed into the flood, gripping Holmes's arm. "Fool, we planned together!" Pulled free, Holmes gasped on solid ground, cape sodden, the powder's residue itching like accusation. "She spoke of a chapel," he rasped, coughing grit. "Reginald's voice guides the traps, water wheels in the maze core." Blackwood knelt beside him, cross pressing into his palm, warm against the chill. "The devil quotes scripture, detective. Her ghosts are chains. Pray with us now." Holmes recoiled, the touch foreign, yet the vicar's eyes held no judgment, only the same unyielding warmth from the vestry. Watson steadied him, moustache beaded with fog. "No more solos, old chap. We're your wreckage too." Mary scanned the dark, knife glinting from her apron. The laundress's hands, calloused from irons, now weapons of reclamation. She's wounded, pride bleeding. Dawn raid holds, but the folly's wake calls us deeper. As the group retreated to St. Mary's spire, fog parting briefly to reveal the garden's silhouette, hedges undulating like breath, Holmes felt the shift within. The powder's ghost lingered, temptation's tide lapping at resolve, but Blackwood's prayer wove through it, a counterpoint melody, grace unearned infiltrating his equations. Yet Thorne's final words burned, join or drown. Inside the vestry, candles guttered as they poured over Mary's sketched map, chapel marked at Maze Heart, folly gears linked to tidal surges. Watson loaded cartridges, his limp forgotten in purpose. The scratches from the river grew frantic outside, a chorus demanding entry. Holmes traced the lines, intellect reigniting. Water wheels powered by Thames ebb. Hedges shift at low tide, trapping victims in false paths. Reginald's design, her perversion. But the voices, recordings, mechanical echoes. Blackwood nodded, etching a rune on his cross. Or souls crying for release. Faith sees beyond gears. Dawn crept, grey light piercing stained glass, bells tolling like a heartbeat. Armed now with more than steel, community's fragile thread, Holmes stood taller, cape drying stiff. But as they stepped toward the gates, a child's wail pierced the mist, not from the river, but the maze depths, fresh. The 64th stirred. Thorne's vendetta deepened, her empire's heart pulsing with stolen lives. Holmes gripped his pipe, unlit, the burn of temptation yielding to a fiercer fire. Not just reason, but redemption's pull. The maze awaited, chapel secrets buried in mud and madness. Would grace suffice, or would the tide claim them all? The group advanced, fog swirling like judgment, gears humming anticipation below. Thorne watched from a hidden turret, vial replenished, Reginald's whisper fueling her next snare. Holmes sensed it, the wheel accelerating, his inner demons aligning for the descent. Low tide neared, chapel beckoning with promises of truth or eternal night. The fog clung to their coats like a living shroud as they crossed the rusted gates of Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens, the iron screeching under Holmes's push a prelude to the labyrinth beyond. Low tide exposed the Thames mudflats, glistening black under the pallid dawn, and the distant grind of hidden water wheels pulsed through the earth, syncing with Holmes's quickening heartbeat. He gripped his unlit pipe tighter, the familiar ache for cocaine's clarity gnawing at the edges of his mind. Thorne's vial, glimpsed in the vestry shadows, whispering promises of sharpened senses amid this madness. Watson walked beside him, revolver heavy in his pocket, his limp masked by determination. Blackwood led with Mary's sketched map clutched in one hand, silver cross in the other, murmuring a steady rhythm of prayer that cut through the damp chill. Mary trailed close, her young face pale but set, the scratches on her arms from yesterday's river scrape now bandaged, a reminder of how close the garden's hunger had come. The entrance to the hedge maze loomed, 12 feet high, yew branches twisted into unnatural arches, leaves dripping condensation that pattered like hesitant footsteps. No birds sang here, only the child's wail echoed faintly from within, pulling them forward. Holmes scanned the walls, noting the subtle shift in bark patterns, fresh clippings, hedges trimmed recently to conceal mechanisms. Reginald's folly, Thorne's perversion, gears buried in the footings powered by the Thames ebb and flow, rearranging paths like a clockwork predator. They stepped in single file, Blackwood first, his boots sinking slightly into the soft loam path. The air thickened, carrying a briny rot mingled with something sweeter, like wilted roses from the pleasure garden's faded heyday. Holmes's mind raced, cataloguing. 63 vanishings over months, all after dusk. Bodies never found, only echoes reported by survivors who fled at the maze's heart. The chapel folly, submerged at high tide, its crypt a tidal trap. A sudden groan reverberated, hedges shuddering as if exhaling. The path forked ahead, left toward a gas lamp flickering erratically, right plunging into denser shadow. Blackwood paused, cross raised. This way feels lighter. Trust the still small voice. Holmes smirked faintly, though doubt flickered. Faith's voice, or wishful mechanics? He knelt, fingers tracing soil, damp, recently disturbed. Pipes underground, perhaps venting recorded cries to disorient. Yet the child's wail sharpened, coming from the right. Watson nodded grimly. Families wait for answers, Holmes. We press on. They veered right, the walls closing in, brushing Holmes's cape with needle-like thorns. His thoughts drifted unbidden to Baker Street solitude, the 7% solution syringe waiting in his drawer, a crutch against boredom's void. Here, in this verdant tomb, boredom was banished, replaced by terror's edge. But temptation slithered too. Thorne's offer, power over chaos if he joined her game. Minutes stretched, paths looping deceptively. Mary's map proved flawed, lines blurred where hedges had shifted overnight. Sweat beaded Holmes's brow despite the cold, his gaunt frame tensing as a whisper slithered from the leaves. Help. Mama. Not mechanical, too raw, laced with a child's terror. Blackwood halted them at a dead end, walls impenetrable. Prayer now. Lord, part the way as you did the sea. He knelt, voice rising in fervent Latin, the words weaving through fog like incense. Holmes stood apart, rational mind rebelling yet mesmerized by the man's conviction. Grace unearned, Blackwood's earlier words in the vestry, clashed with his equations. No divine intervention, only physics, low tide weakening the gears, paths locking until flood. A rumble built, ground trembling. Hedges parted slowly to the left, revealing a narrow corridor lined with cracked statues, nymphs and satyrs from Vauxhall's revelry days, eyes hollowed by time. They hurried through, Watson's breath ragged. Feels like the belly of the beast. Deeper in, the air grew oppressive, light dimming to twilight gloom. Holmes spotted a glint, brass plaque half buried, engraved with Reginald Thorne's initials, her late husband, the engineer whose tidal folly bankrupted the gardens decades ago. Thorne had revived it, not for pleasure, but profit, opium-laced revels drawing the desperate, vanishing them into her maze for silence or ransom. The wail crescendoed, leading to a clearing where the chapel folly squatted. Ivy-choked stone with a domed roof cracked like an eggshell, crypt door ajar above rising mud. Water lapped at its base, Thames seepage bubbling up. Inside, shadows danced from a single lantern, and there, a small figure huddled by the altar, boy no older than 10, clothes muddied, eyes wide with animal fear. Mary gasped, rushing forward, but Holmes seized her arm. Trap. The boy looked up, lips moving soundlessly. Then fog poured from the crypt, thick as smoke carrying Thorne's perfume. She emerged from the gloom, crimson gown stark against grey, emerald eyes gleaming triumph. Clever, Mr. Holmes. You've navigated my parlour, but low tide ends soon. Join me. Your mind deserves this empire, or drown with the innocents. The boy whimpered, chains clinking faintly at his ankles, 64th bait for fools. Watson drew his revolver, steady despite his limp. "Release him, Lady Thorne. This ends." She laughed, low and silken, vial glinting in her gloved hand. Ends. Reginald's dream was eternity, trapping revelers' souls in echoes, powering the gears with their despair. I merely perfected it. Cocaine sharpened my visions. Imagine what it does for yours. Holmes's hand twitched toward his pocket, where he'd palmed a trace of her powder during the vestry confrontation, temptation incarnate. The rush called, promising to pierce this fog of doubt, reveal her mechanisms. Blackwood stepped between, cross-extended. "Evil flees light, Evelyn. Your husband's folly was pride. Yours is despair. Release them all." Thorne's facade cracked, porcelain skin flushing. "Pride? He left me ruined, drowning in debt. This maze repays, silences creditors, feeds the Thames' forgotten souls. You, priest, with your grace, its weakness." Gears groaned louder, water surging into the crypt, mud rising fast. The boy cried out as chains pulled taut, dragging him toward a grate. Holmes lunged, intellect overriding craving, pipe used as lever to pry links. Watson fired at the mechanism, sparks flying, buying seconds. Thorne vanished into fog, her laughter echoing as paths shifted again, sealing exits. Water climbed ankles, cold and insistent, carrying faint cries from below, 63 ghosts demanding justice. Holmes freed the boy, hoisting him to Mary, but his vision blurred, Powder's ghost igniting nerves. "Not now." Blackwood pulled him upright, hand firm on shoulder. "Strength not your own, Sherlock, borrow mine." They retreated, splashing through rising tide, boy's weight slowing them. A wall slammed shut behind, screams muffled. Outside the clearing, paths realigned chaotically, water wheels accelerating. Holmes's mind whirled, chapel flooded deliberately. Bodies preserved in crypt for Thorne's rituals, or levers to opium dens hidden beyond. Exhausted, they collapsed at a dry juncture, boy shivering in Mary's arms. "Comment who you suspect," he thought fleetingly, the puzzle's pieces taunting. "Can you solve it first?" Thorne's empire hid accomplices, groundskeepers, vanishing cries, perhaps police in pocket. Watson reloaded, voice hoarse. "We're deeper, but alive." "What's next?" Holmes stared at his powder-dusted fingers, resolve hardening amid the burn. Not surrender. The chapel's crypt holds proof, blueprints, ledgers. High tide submerges it, but echoes betray her. Blackwood nodded, etching a blessing on the map. Faith maps the unseen paths. As water lapped higher, a new cry pierced, not child's but woman's, desperate from the opposite fork. Thorne's or another victim? Low tide's reprieve ended. The maze hungered anew, gears turning toward climax. Holmes rose, cape sodden, temptation quelled by purpose, fiercer than any drug, redemption's razor edge, cutting through fog to truth. They plunged toward the scream, hedges whispering secrets, Thames tide rising like judgment's flood. Thorne's turret gaze followed, vial poised, her vulnerability masked by vengeance. One slip, and Holmes's inner demons would feast or grace would prevail in mud and madness. The scream tore through the fog like a blade, sharp and feminine, laced with terror that clawed at Holmes's fraying nerves. Water sloshed around their knees now, the Thames' relentless surge turning the maze into a labyrinth of mirrors. Hedges reflected infinitely in puddles, distorting faces into grotesque masks. Holmes led, his Inverness cape heavy as chainmail, soaked through to the skin. Each step sent jolts up his legs, the cocaine's residue pulsing like a second heartbeat, urging him to pause, to indulge the burn for clarity. But he pressed on, the boy's rescue fueling a fire purer than any powder. Watson splashed close behind, revolver gripped white-knuckled, his limp exaggerated by the uneven stone path. Mary cradled the shivering child, her skirts hiked above the flood, whispering comforts that cut through the roar of distant water wheels. Blackwood brought up the rear, his clerical collar stark against the gloom, map clutched like a talisman, murmuring prayers that seemed to steady the very air. "That way," Holmes rasped, pointing to a fork where gas lamps flickered erratically, casting long shadows that danced like spectres. The cry came again, closer, ending in a gurgle, as if drowned mid-breath. Thorne's voice? No, higher, frailer. Another soul ensnared. They veered left, hedges brushing their arms like insistent fingers, Thorne snagging cloth and flesh. The air thickened with the metallic tang of rust and rot, mingled with something sweeter, opium smoke wafting from hidden vents. Holmes's mind raced, piecing the horror. The garden's reopening wasn't mere spectacle. Thorne had weaponized the maze's Victorian engineering, movable walls on hydraulic pistons, triggered by tides and levers, funneling victims to submerged crypts beneath the old chapel. 63 lost, their essences harvested for her empire's rituals. No, simpler, deadlier, trafficked to dens beyond the river, bodies dumped when spent. But the chapel's echoes suggested more, preserved relics, ledgers of the damned. A wall groaned ahead, grinding open to reveal a sunken alcove. There, knee-deep in water, flailed a young woman, her maid's uniform torn, dark curls plastered to a face pale as moonlight. Her hands clawed at vines that had snaked around her waist, mechanical tendrils coiling tighter with each tide's push. "Help! Please!" she gasped, eyes wild, locking on Holmes. "The lady. She locked me in, said I'd serve forever." Holmes waded in, knife flashing from his pocket, severing the vines with precise slashes. They recoiled like living things, splashing back into the murk. Watson hauled her out, Mary wrapping her shawl around the girl's trembling shoulders. "Elias," Holmes said softly to the boy still in Mary's arms, "is this your sister?" The child nodded, burying his face. "Becca. They took us both." Becca collapsed against Watson, sobbing. Lady Thorne promised work at the reopening, dancing, lights, but the maze. It eats people. Shifts at night. I heard the others, trapped below, banging on stone. Blackwood knelt in the water, unmindful of the chill, placing a hand on her brow. "Peace, child. The Lord who parted seas will guide us out." Holmes paced the alcove's edge, eyes scanning the walls for seams. Seams everywhere, blueprints in his mind overlaying the chaos. The tide crests in 20 minutes. This path leads to the chapel's nave, higher ground. From there, the turret. But Thorne's laughter slithered from above, amplified by funneled acoustics. "Clever, Mr. Holmes. Rescuing strays. How noble. Join me atop, and I'll show you the full design, or drown with them." He tilted his head back, spotting her silhouette on a precarious bridge overhead, vial glinting in lamplight. Temptation coiled in his gut. Not just her words, but the promise of revelation, of the puzzle's heart. The powder called too, whispering that only its fire could illuminate the dark. Watson steadied Becca. "She's bluffing. We go around." "No," Holmes murmured. "She wants witnesses." Her empire crumbles without fear's facade. They pushed on, the group tighter now, Becca stumbling between Watson and Mary. The path climbed slightly, water receding to calves, but pressure built, gears whirring louder, hedges rustling as if alive. Holmes's vision sharpened unnaturally, cocaine's gift warring with exhaustion. Flashes, his Baker Street rooms, violin untouched. Moriarty's shadow from cases past. Detached genius, they called him, but detachment was death here in mud and madness. Blackwood fell in step beside him, voice low. "You're fighting more than walls, Sherlock. That powder, it's your maze, shifting to trap you." Holmes shot him a glance, grey eyes stormy. "Faith won't turn gears, Reverend. Logic will." "Yet faith built this place," Blackwood replied gently. "Vauxhall's founders sought joy in creation's wonder. Thorne perverts it, as you'd risk perverting your gifts." The words stung, piercing the fog of withdrawal. Holmes clenched his fists, nails biting palms. "Gifts? I've solved empire's riddles, saved queens. But 63 souls. And your own?" Blackwood pressed, unflinching. "Watson worries. Mary prays. Even Thorne sees it. Your potential to expose or join." Ahead, the path widened into the chapel nave, a domed ruin half swallowed by overgrowth. Broken stained glass filtered moonlight into bloody hues, illuminating pews upturned like drowned beasts. Water lapped at the altar, a stone slab etched with faded Latin. In labyrintho veritatis, in the labyrinth of truth. They clambered onto dry stone, gasping relief. Becca pointed upward, the turret stairs, there behind the pulpit. But as Holmes approached, floor tiles shifted, revealing a grate. Beneath, faces pressed against iron, gaunt, pleading, water rising to their chins. 63-5, their mouths opening in silent screams. God, Mary whispered, clutching Elias. Thorne's voice boomed from speakers hidden in vaults. See my collection. Opium eases their weight. Join Holmes or flood them. His hand trembled toward the powder vial in his pocket. One pinch and calculations would flow, levers, tides, escape vectors. But Blackwood's hand covered his. Strength not your own, the Reverend echoed from earlier. Borrow the divine. Holmes hesitated, the burn agonizing. Reason faltered. For the first time, something deeper stirred, a whisper not of vice but grace. He pocketed the vial, smashing it underfoot. Glass crunched, powder swirling into water like banished sin. Now, he growled. Watson, barricade the grate. Mary, Becca, Elias. Up the stairs. Reverend, map the turret access. They moved as one, Watson wedging pews against the grate, muffling the trapped one's frenzy. Mary led the children upward, spiral stairs creaking underfoot. Blackwood traced symbols on walls, old Anglican wards against evil. Holmes climbed last, mind clearing like fog burned off by dawn. Thorne waited above, her emerald eyes gleaming with fractured hunger. No longer seductress, but unraveling queen, corset muddied, hair wild. You destroyed it, she hissed, as he crested the turret platform. Wind whipping the Thames below, my clarity. Now witness mine. She lunged, not with blade but desperation, a shove toward the parapet. Holmes sidestepped, grabbing her wrist. Below, the maze churned, paths converging on the chapel, tide peaking. Why? He demanded, pinning her. The vanishings. For gold? Power? Her laugh cracked. Power. To forget. My husband built this maze, hid his debts in opium. I finished it. They come for pleasure, stay for oblivion. You're no different, detective, addict to puzzles, to highs. Mary screamed from below, water breaching the nave, grate buckling. Thorne twisted free, vial shattering on stone, her own poison spilling. But Holmes saw it. Not monster, but widow warped by loss, vulnerability raw as his own demons. Help us stop it, he said, voice steady. Or drown with your ghosts. She froze, eyes flickering to the map Blackwood thrust forward. Paths to freedom, marked in faith and fact. The tide roared, walls slamming shut distantly. Choice hung, razor-sharp. Then a new groan, deeper, structural. The turret trembled, Thorne's empire fracturing from within. Holmes pulled her back from the edge as stone cracked beneath. Not end here, not like this. But below cries swelled, trapped souls rising with the flood. Escape narrowed to heartbeats, Thorne's hand in his a fragile bridge between damnation and dawn. Watson's shout echoed up, "Hurry!" The gears reverse, but only once. They descended into chaos, alliances shifting like the maze itself. Holmes's transformation igniting, not in powder's fire, but redemption's quiet flame. One wrong turn, and all would flood into oblivion. Holmes gripped the rusted railing as they plunged down the spiral stairs, the turret's groan echoing like a dying beast behind them. Water sloshed at their heels, cold and insistent, carrying the metallic tang of the Thames mingled with rot from centuries-buried sins. Thorne's hand slipped in his, slick with sweat and spilled vial remnants, but she didn't pull away. Not yet. Her breath came ragged, each step a betrayal of the Iron Empress she'd once been. Watson waited at the bottom, lantern swinging wildly, its flame dancing shadows across his weathered face. Mary clung to Blackwood's arm, the vicar's robes sodden, his chalked symbols smudged but defiant on the chapel door. The grate had given way fully now, floodwaters churning into the nave, bubbling up through cracked flagstones like vengeful spirits seeking release. This way, Watson barked, pointing to a side passage half submerged. The gears are reversing. The maze paths should align for 10 minutes, no more. Holmes, she's with us? Thorne met Watson's gaze, her emerald eyes dulled by exhaustion, lips parted in a ghost of her former smirk. For now, Doctor, tell your detective not to get pious. Holmes released her wrist but stayed close, his mind a whirlwind sharper than any cocaine haze. The injection's fire still lingered in his veins, a false clarity he'd chased for years, but here, amid the roar, something truer emerged. A quiet conviction born not of deduction alone, but of the fragile trust in his grasp. He'd seen her shatter, not with villainy, but the raw ache of a woman who'd built walls higher than this maze to bury her grief, her husband's debts, the opium that claimed him, the gardens she'd twisted into a trap for the desperate, mirrors of his own voids, filled with powder and puzzles. They splashed into the passage, Blackwood leading with murmured prayers, his voice a steady anchor. "Lord, guide our steps through this valley," he intoned, fingers tracing a hasty cross on the dripping wall. The water rose to their knees, pulling at legs like greedy hands. Holmes scanned the converging paths ahead, the map's faith-marked lines burning in memory. Not mere geometry, but wards intertwined with logic, ancient Anglican sigils overlaid on tide mechanisms, a hybrid of divine plea and Victorian engineering. A scream pierced from the left fork, faint, human. "One of the lost," Mary whispered, her voice breaking. "She's right. We can't leave them." Thorne halted, water lapping her corset. "Leave them. That's the mercy, girl. They chose oblivion. Like I did." "No," Holmes said firmly, his aquiline profile cutting the dim light. "They chose pleasure, as you say. But oblivion chose them. We're undoing that, all of us." She searched his face, wind-tossed curls framing doubt. "Why you?" "The great Holmes, solver of riddles, risking it for strangers. For me." "Because I've been them," he admitted, the words tasting of ash and revelation. "Boredom's prisoner chasing highs in syringes and shadows. This maze mirrors it, endless turns, false escapes. But reason demands we try. And faith. Faith insists." Blackwood nodded ahead, his kind eyes flickering with approval. The vicar pressed on, lantern revealing a narrow archway where paths converged. The water surged higher, now thigh-deep, currents dragging relics from the depths, a lady's fan warped and gilded, a man's pocket watch ticking futilely. Watson fired his revolver into the gloom, a warning shot that echoed, scattering phantom shapes. "Rats or worse? Keep moving." They pushed through, Thorne stumbling, Holmes steadying her without thought. Her touch ignited not desire, but recognition, a shared unraveling. In her he saw the cost of isolation, in himself the grace of companionship. Watson's loyalty, Blackwood's quiet belief, Mary's unyielding hope. Community he'd dismissed it once as sentimental clutter. Now it was lifeline. The arch opened to a rotunda, the maze's heart, where fountains once sprayed champagne, now spewed brackish foam. Statues loomed, nymphs and satyrs, moss-veiled, eyes seeming to follow. Here the true groan originated, massive gears beneath the floor, grinding reverse under tidal force, paths shifting with metallic shrieks. Mary pointed, gasping. There, the grate to the surface. But Thorne froze, staring at a submerged alcove. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Edmund?" A figure bobbed in the eddies, skeletal, clad in decayed finery, her husband's remains preserved by the maze's cruel design, hidden to fuel her illusions. She waded toward it, tears carving paths down mud-streaked cheeks. "No," Holmes called, lunging after. "It's the past, let it go." She knelt in the filth, cradling the bones. He promised eternity here in pleasure's arms. I made it real. For him. For me. Blackwood knelt beside her, voice gentle. "Eternity isn't in traps, Lady Thorne. It's in release. Forgive yourself as he forgives." She shuddered, the weight crushing. But the vanishings. 63 souls, lured by my whispers, lost to gears and tide. How? Holmes knelt too, water soaking his Inverness cape. "The mechanism, your husband's folly, perfected by you. Tunnels sink with Thames ebbs, false walls seal on flood. Pleasure seekers enter for thrills, emerge. or don't. Opium dens fed the lure, debts paid in silence. But the sigils, Blackwood's forebears, etched them as wards. They weakened it, just enough. Thorne's laugh was hollow. Wards against my sin? Against despair, the vicar said. Faith disrupts the machine as truth does yours. Watson scanned the gears, revolver ready. Talk later, paths closing. A wall slammed distant, vibrations shaking the rotunda. Thorne rose, clutching a ring from the bones, simple gold worn smooth. Then led, detective. But know this. My empire ends tonight. Yours begins. Holmes met her gaze, the cocaine's edge yielding to clarity profound. Perhaps no more voids. They charged for the grate, Mary first, hauling herself up iron rungs slick with slime. Blackwood followed, prayers unbroken. Watson boosted Thorne, her gown tearing, exposing not seduction but frailty. Holmes last as gears whined to halt. Above ground, Vauxhall's overgrown lawn spread under gas lamps' feeble glow, fog rolling thick from the river. Big Ben told midnight, a somber knell. But cries still echoed from below. More trapped, the 63, not all phantoms. We go back, Mary insisted, eyes fierce. For them. Thorne straightened, ring glinting. Yes, my maze, my reckoning. Holmes nodded, pulse steady, demons quieted not by triumph, but surrender to something larger, reason wed to grace. Watson clapped his shoulder. One more turn, old friend. But as they turned to re-enter, a shadow detached from the fog. Inspector Lestrade, lantern high, constables fanning out. Halt, in the Queen's name, for the Vanishings, the opium ring. Holmes. Thorne. Allies fractured anew, the maze's final twist, not stone, but law's unyielding jaws. Thorne's hand found Holmes's again, a pact sealed in peril. Dawn crept reluctant over the Thames, but oblivion whispered one last lure. Would reason prevail, or faith forge the path? The great beckoned, secrets unrelinquished. Fog clung to the overgrown lawns of Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens like a shroud, thick and unyielding under the gas lamps' sputtering halos. Big Ben's toll faded into the night, leaving only the lap of the Thames against weed-choked banks and the distant clamour of river traffic. Sherlock Holmes stood frozen, Lady Evelyn Thorne's hand warm in his, a fleeting anchor amid the chaos. Inspector Lestrade advanced, lantern swinging, his pinched face etched with grim determination, flanked by 6 constables in greatcoats. Truncheons at the ready. Holmes, Thorne, Lestrade barked, voice cutting the mist. Hands where I can see 'em. We've warrants for conspiracy, endangerment, the lot. 63 souls gone. Your doing, by God. Watson stepped forward, revolver still holstered but palm hovering near. Easy, Inspector, it's not what you think. The maze, it's alive. Machinery from Blackwood's kin, trapping folk in illusions. Lestrade snorted, eyes narrowing on Thorne's torn gown and the grime streaking her porcelain skin. Illusions? We've raided the opium dens, found ledgers in her name. Bodies or no, you're all complicit. Cuff 'em. Mary Blackwood planted herself between, her vicar's collar askew, hands outstretched like a shepherd guarding lambs. No, George. Listen first. We've seen the gears, the sigils, wards against despair itself. Folks down there still crying out. Faith broke the cycle for us. Let us break it for them. The inspector faltered, lantern dipping as recognition dawned. Mary? Vicar Blackwood? What in blazes are you doing with this lot? Holmes seized the pause, his mind racing clear now. Cocaine's haze banished by adrenaline, and something purer, purpose laced with humility. Inspector, the Vanishings aren't murder. A subterranean clockwork, powered by collective anguish, feeds on lost souls. We've halted it, but remnants linger. Cries from the grate, hear them. A constable shifted, uneasy. Faint wails rose indeed, ethereal through the iron bars, piercing the fog like needles. Lestrade's jaw tightened, mustache twitching. Tricks. Thorne's tricks. She's the spider at the web's heart. Thorne released Holmes's hand, stepping into the lantern light, emerald eyes steady despite the tremor in her voice. No more webs, George. My father's machine, my greed fueled it. Opium debts paid the workmen, pleasure seekers fed the hunger below. But it's crumbling. Arrest me after. We save them first. Lestrade eyed her, then Holmes, conflict warring in his bulldog features. Years of Scotland Yard loyalty clashed with the detective's unerring instincts. Holmes never lied, not even to save his skin. Bloody hell. 2 minutes. Prove it or it's Newgate for the pack of you. They surged to the grate, Watson wrenching it open with a crowbar from a constable's kit. Rust flaked into the void, and the wails sharpened. Desperate pleas from the labyrinth's depths. Holmes descended first, deerstalker lost, curly hair matted with sweat, Inverness cape snagging on jagged edges. His limp heart, once numb to human frailty, pounded with unfamiliar urgency. Not for glory, but redemption. His own, perhaps, glimpsed in Thorne's unravelling empire and Mary's unyielding prayers. Below, the tunnel reeked of damp stone and decaying leaves, gas lamps above casting erratic shadows. Gears groaned faintly, residual power twitching like a dying beast. Thorne led, her corset laces frayed, revealing scars not of vanity but old falls from grace, childhood tumbles in these very grounds, her father whispering of wards that failed. Mary murmured scripture, voice a steady lantern. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow. Watson covered the rear, revolver drawn, limp forgotten in the press. A junction loomed, paths branching into the hedge maze's underbelly. Stone replicas overgrown with bioluminescent moss, pulsing faintly. Voices echoed strongest from the left. Help. Lost. So cold. Holmes traced a sigil on the wall, fingers lingering on the etched cross twisted into gears. Blackwood's forebears meant to bind despair, not amplify it. Faith as counterweight, disrupts the mechanism. They pressed on, air growing thicker, laced with opium residue that clawed at Holmes's throat, tempting old voids. His hand shook, not from withdrawal, but memory. Baker Street empty. Needle's kiss promising oblivion. No more, he vowed silently. Reason alone faltered. Grace, borrowed from Mary, steadied it. A chamber opened, vast as the old rotunda, walls lined with iron cages, dozens, some empty, others holding gaunt figures, eyes hollow, murmuring in trance. 63 or near enough. Time warped here, days to hours above. One man rattled bars, face skeletal, water. Please. Thorne unlocked the first with her ring, key and talisman. Water flask passed hand to hand. Mary knelt, praying individually, her touch seeming to snap illusions. Watson hauled them free, constables above forming a chain. But midway gears whirred anew. A wall shuddered, slamming shut behind, trapping 2 constables mid-rescue. Shouts turned to muffled thumps. Lestrade bellowed from above. Holmes, it's sealing! Holmes spun, mind dissecting the pattern. Central cog, there! He dashed, scaling a pile of bones, relics, not fresh, to a pedestal. A master lever, sigil veiled. Pull it, risk collapse, ignore, lose more. Thorne climbed beside, breath ragged. My father's failsafe. Despair reignites it. Mary called up. Faith, Sherlock, not force alone. He gripped the lever, aquiline nose flaring, grey eyes fierce. Inner demons jeered, failure, isolation. But Watson's nod from below, Thorne's hand on his arm, Mary's voice rising in him. They wove a net. Reason wed faith. He pulled. Gears screamed, reversing. Walls creaked open, constables tumbling free, gasping. Caged souls stirred en masse, illusions shattering like frost. One woman clutched Thorne, weeping. You, the lady of the maze, saved us. Thorne's facade cracked fully, tears carving clean paths through grime. No lady, just Evelyn, broken, like you. Above, dawn's light pierced the fog, Thames glittering rose gold. Rescued staggered out, blankets draped, constables guiding to carriages. Lestrade clapped Holmes's back, gruff. Warrants withdrawn. But Thorne, opium's on her. Holmes faced the inspector. Evidence circumstantial now, let justice breathe, her reckoning's begun. Lestrade grunted assent, eyeing Mary. Vicar, you're a mad one. Mary smiled faintly. Faith's madder still. Watson drew Holmes aside as crowds dispersed, Pleasure Gardens stirring with whispers. You've changed, old chap. The void. Gone? Holmes gazed at the maze entrance. Now still, sigils dormant. Not gone. Filled. By them. By grace, if you will. Thorne approached, ring removed, handed to Mary. For your church. Wards renewed. Mary accepted, nodding. Redemption's path, lady. Walk it. But as Thorne turned toward the river path, a figure emerged from the mist, a boy no more than 12, ragged clothes, eyes wide with terror. Mama? He scanned the rescued, then froze on Thorne. You. The whispers said you took her. Thorne paled, emerald eyes widening. The last, hidden deeper. My final debt. Holmes's pulse quickened. One soul unaccounted. The machine's heart still beat. The boy pointed to a concealed grate, overgrown. There. Screams at night. Lestrade sighed. Not over then. Holmes nodded, cape swirling as he moved. Into the shadow once more. Thorne followed, Watson and Mary close. Dawn promised light, but the maze guarded its deepest secret, a mother's final cry, echoing Holmes's own buried pain. Would they unearth it, or bury themselves anew? The grate yawned, oblivion's last whisper growing to a roar. Holmes knelt before the overgrown grate, his long fingers prying at rusted iron bars slick with Thames slime. The air thickened here, heavy with the rot of forgotten decades, mingling with the faint acrid tang of opium residue that clung to the pleasure gardens like a curse. Behind him, the boy, Tommy, he had gasped out his name, huddled against Watson's leg, small fists clenched in his threadbare jacket. Thorne stood rigid, her emerald eyes fixed on the dark moor, breath shallow as if the shadows pulled at her very lungs. This grate, concealed beneath ivy-choked roots at the maze's root, where the earth dipped into a forgotten undercroft, whispered secrets the surface mechanisms had only hinted at. No gears here, no illusions of brass and steam, just raw earth and stone, the belly of Vauxhall's original foundations from its heyday in the 1700s, when revellers danced under lantern light before scandal sealed it shut. Holmes wedged his deerstalker pipe between the bars, leveraging until metal groaned and gave way, revealing a jagged tunnel sloping into blackness. Watson lit a bullseye lantern, its beam slicing the gloom like a scalpel. Lead on, Holmes. But mind the air. Could be foul. Thorne moved first, surprising them all, her corseted gown tearing on jagged edges as she descended the slick ladder. I know this place. Her voice echoed, stripped of its usual velvet seduction, raw as an open wound. Built it myself, years back. To hide. Everything. Mary followed close, her vicar's collar glinting faintly, hand steady on a small silver cross at her throat. The light caught her kind face, lined with quiet resolve as she murmured a prayer under her breath. Not alone, Evelyn. Not anymore. The tunnel narrowed, walls pressing in with the damp chill of subterranean London, where the Thames seeped through cracks like blood from a vein. Holmes's mind raced, cataloguing. The sigils carved here were older, pre-Victorian, alchemical symbols twisted into something profane. Binding spells, perhaps, fueled by desperation rather than mere greed. 63 accounted for above, but this boy's mother, Eliza Grimes, a laundress from Lambeth slums, vanished 3 nights past. Thorne's final debt, as she called it. Footsteps splashed in shallow puddles. Then a sound, faint, rhythmic, like muffled sobs, woven with the drip of water. Thorne froze, hand to her mouth. There. The lantern swung, illuminating a chamber at the tunnel's end, a natural cavern, shored up with crumbling timbers from the garden's glory days. Chains dangled from the ceiling, empty now, but in the corner, a figure slumped against the wall. A woman, mid-30s, dress sodden and torn, hair matted with mud. Eliza. She stirred weakly, eyes fluttering open, hollowed by terror and hunger. Mama! Tommy broke free, scrambling past them, collapsing beside her. The boy buried his face in her neck, her arms enfolding him with a gasp that tore through the silence. Thorne approached slowly, knees buckling as she knelt. Eliza, I didn't mean. The opium haze, it demanded more. You came for work, the garden's reopening, and I... Eliza lifted her head, recognition dawning through fevered haze. You, the lady with the promises. Locked us down here for your devil's machine upstairs, feeding our fears to power it. Holmes scanned the chamber. Faded murals on the walls depicted Vauxhall's masquerades, revelers vanishing into hedges, but overlaid with fresh scratches, names, dates, 63 tallies leading to Elias's. The machine above drew not just bodies, but essence, fear, regret, the soul's opium. Thorne had refined it, turning personal demons into profit. Not devils, Thorne whispered, voice breaking. My own hell husband gone to cholera left me with debts. The gardens were my inheritance derelict. Found these old rights in a bookseller's attic. Promises of control. Started small, debtors first, then more. Watson helped Eliza to her feet, wrapping his coat around her shivering form. Steady now. Fresh air soon, but Holmes's gaze fixed on a shadowed alcove, a small altar, opium pipe shattered beside a ledger. He flipped it open, names, payments, Thorne's elegant script detailing each vanishing, and at the end, Eliza's, with a note, last one. End it. Mary placed a hand on Thorne's shoulder. Grace isn't earned in ledgers, Evelyn. It's claimed. Thorne recoiled at first, then leaned into the touch, sobs racking her frame. I chained her myself. Heard her pray for Tommy. Thought it would quiet my own screams. Eliza, surprisingly, reached out, frail hand grasping Thorne's. Boy needs his ma. You let him find me. That's something. The group ascended slowly, Tommy supporting his mother, Watson and Mary flanking Thorne, who walked unsteadily, as if shedding invisible weights. Emerging into dawn's strengthening light, the Thames sparkled innocently, horse carts rumbling distant on South Bank cobbles. Lestrade waited above, constables forming a loose cordon, but his nod to Holmes signalled restraint. No irons yet. Inspector, Holmes said, lantern extinguished. The gardens close permanently. Thorne testifies fully, names her suppliers. Dismantles the remnants. Lestrade eyed the group, mustache twitching. Faith-healing criminals now. Bloody modern times. Holmes allowed a rare smile. Reason tempered. Mary glanced at him, her eyes knowing. His cocaine vial lay shattered back in the chamber, discarded in the night's frenzy. As medics tended Eliza and Tommy, Thorne pulled Holmes aside, voice low. You saw it all. Why not expose me fully? Because endings aren't puzzles solved, Holmes replied, gaze drifting to the maze's silent arches. Their lives remade. You've debts, yes. But so do I. Boredom's poison nearly claimed me. She nodded, tears drying in the chill breeze. Then help me pay mine. The families upstairs, they hate me, one amends at a time, start with truth. Watson watched them, a warmth spreading in his chest despite the limp ache from the descent. Holmes, ever the machine, now hummed with something human, vulnerability, perhaps even faith. The void Watson had glimpsed in Baker Street during those cocaine-fogged nights seemed bridged. Mary gathered the boy and mother toward a waiting carriage. Vicarage first, rest and broth, then home. But as Thorne turned to follow, a constable approached, hesitant. Ma'am, Lady Thorne? Word from the river docks, your brother's ship docked early from India, demanding to see you, says he knows about the gardens. Thorne paled, the fragile peace fracturing. Brother? He was dead to me, cut ties after the scandals. Holmes's eyes sharpened. Reginald Thorne? The East India Company man? Listed in your ledger as first investor. She swallowed hard. Worse. He supplied the rights, the alchemical core. If he's here. The maze loomed behind, hedges rustling unnaturally in the still air, as if stirring anew. Dawn's promise flickered. Reginald's arrival unearthed not just debts, but a deeper architect, one who might reignite the machine's hunger. Holmes felt the familiar thrill, now laced with dread. Family wreckage. The hardest puzzle. Would Thorne stand or crumble? And what shadow did this brother cast on his own buried pains, the army scars Watson shared, the losses unspoken? The river mist thickened, carrying a low, mechanical hum from the depths. The carriage wheels clattered over the slick cobblestones of Lambeth's South Bank, as dawn clawed its way through the Thames fog, turning the river into a sluggish serpent of grey. Holmes sat rigid beside Lady Evelyn Thorne, his Inverness cape damp with mist, the faint tremor in his fingers betraying the cocaine's ghost still haunting his veins. Watson rode opposite, revolver heavy in his pocket, eyes flicking to the boy Tommy curled against his mother Eliza in the rear seat. Mary Morstan, ever the quiet anchor from the vicarage circle, murmured soft reassurances, her hand steady on Eliza's shoulder. But Thorne's face was a mask cracking at the edges, her emerald eyes fixed on the docks ahead, where gas lamps sputtered like dying stars. Reginald Thorne stepped from the gangplank of the SS Indiaman as if the ship itself had regurgitated a demon from the colonies. Tall and weathered, his skin baked to leather by Indian suns, he wore a sweat-stained solatopi and a moustache curled like a scimitar. Gold glinted on his fingers, spoils from East India Company ledgers, stained with opium and worse. His eyes, dull brown mirrors of Evelyn's own, locked on her the moment the carriage halted. Evelyn, still playing the lady while the gardens rot. His voice boomed, laced with that clipped Raj accent, drawing stares from dockworkers unloading crates of spice and sin. She descended, skirts whispering against the wet planks, chin lifted but voice threading thin. Reginald, I buried you in letters years ago. What drags you from Bombay? He laughed, a bark that echoed off the warehouses, stepping close enough for Holmes to catch the reek of curry and cheap cheroots. Buried? Like our father buried his scandals? No, sister, I come for my due. The maize machine hums no more? Pity. Those alchemical rites I shipped, mercury salts, phosphorus elixirs from Calcutta mystics, cost a fortune. And the vanishings? 63 souls to fuel it, or so the whispers say. Holmes emerged then, his gaunt frame unfolding like a shadow detaching from the fog, grey eyes piercing. Mr. Thorne, I presume. Consulting Detective Sherlock Holmes. Your sister's ledgers name you the architect. Care to explain how a hedge maze devours men whole? Reginald's gaze shifted, appraising Holmes with the cold calculus of a bazaar trader. The great detective. I've read Watson's scribbles in the Strand, but mazes aren't hedges, sir. They're veins. Pumped with my compounds, they twist time itself. Echoes of ancient rites, Vedic shadows blended with Rosicrucian fire. Visitors wander, lost in loops, bodies rendered to ether for the machine's heart. Gold from investors like me kept it spinning illicit pleasures. Evelyn's hand trembled at her throat, the crimson lips paling. You promised secrecy. The gardens were to be our rebirth. Opium dreams without the dens, fortunes without the filth. Secrecy? Reginald sneered, pulling a small vial from his pocket, swirling with iridescent liquid. This restarts it. One drop in the core chamber, and the hedges hunger anew. Families paid for thrills, we delivered oblivion. Join me, Evelyn, or watch your empire crumble as the constables circle. Watson gripped his cane tighter, the old Afghan limp throbbing in the chill, but his voice cut steady. Enough. 63 gone. Dockers, lovers, children like Tommy here. You've no right to their ghosts. Reginald whirled on him. Ghosts? Profitable ones. And you, Doctor, your war scars mirror mine. Lost mates in the hills? This maze heals nothing. It erases. Pure efficiency. Holmes stepped between them, his mind racing through the clues now crystallizing. The ledger's coded shipments, the unnatural rustle in still air, the hum like a distant engine. Not magic, but chemistry twisted by desperation. Your rights, Thorne. They exploited voids in the human soul. Boredom, vice, the ache for escape. I know it well. His voice softened, a rare fracture, eyes drifting to Watson. The needles whisper in Baker Street nights. But erasure isn't redemption. Evelyn clutched Holmes's arm, her porcelain skin flushed. He speaks truth, Reginald. I've confessed. The medics saved Eliza and Tommy from the depths last night. No more blood, ether or otherwise. Reginald's laugh died, eyes narrowing to slits. Confessed. To this lot. The vicar's wife, the crippled doctor, your pet detective. Father would spit. He built Thorne shipping on darker trades, slaves disguised as indentures. We carry the line. Mary spoke then, her voice soft as vicarage candlelight, rising from the carriage where Eliza clutched Tommy close. "Lines can break, Mr. Thorne. Grace isn't inherited, it's chosen. We've all wreckage. Mine's a husband lost to drink before the pulpit called me, but community mends." He scoffed, but Holmes saw the flicker. Doubt in the trader's stance, the vial half hidden. Plant the seed Watson had taught him in quieter moments. Press the fracture. "Your sister chooses amends," Holmes pressed. "Families wait at the garden's pavilion, widows, orphans. Speak to them. Or pour that poison and damn us all." Reginald hesitated, the fog thickening around the docks, carrying the Thames's brackish tang and a faint mechanical whine from upriver. "The maze calls me back. One last harvest." Evelyn lunged then, snatching the vial, her nails raking his wrist. "No, not again. For father, for us. Enough." He shoved her back, gentleness gone, but Holmes was faster, pipe stem jabbing his forearm like a surgeon's probe. "Drop it." The vial shattered on the planks, liquid hissing into smoke that stung their eyes. Reginald staggered, clutching his arm, rage twisting to something raw. Grief, perhaps, for the boy he'd been before the company's grind. "You meddle in God's work, detective." But as constables approached, whistles shrill in the mist, he straightened. "This isn't over. The Corps' formulas live in my head. I'll rebuild elsewhere. Singapore, perhaps." Holmes watched him melt into the crowd, heart pounding not from chase but revelation. The maze mirrored his voids, intellect chasing oblivion, reason fraying against chaos. Yet here, in fog and fracture, choice emerged. Thorne stood trembling, vial shards at her feet. "Thank you, but he'll return." Watson clapped Holmes's shoulder, moustache twitching with pride. "You've bent no laws today, old chap, just hearts." As they piled back into the carriage, Eliza whispered to Tommy, "Look, lad, the river lightens. Home soon." But Holmes's gaze lingered on the garden's silhouette across the water, hedges whispering in the breeze. Reginald's words echoed, "Rebuild elsewhere." The machine's hunger wasn't stone, it was human frailty, his own included. Watson caught his eye, sensing the storm. "What's next?" "Holmes, reconciliation demands pursuit. Reginald's ship manifests, coded cargo logs, but deeper, Thorne's family secrets. If he reignites this elsewhere..." The carriage lurched toward the Vauxhall gates, where families gathered under the pavilion's sagging arches, faces etched with loss and dawning hope. Mary led Eliza inside, broth steaming from urns provided by the church circle. Thorne hesitated at the threshold, corset straining with each breath. "Go on," Holmes urged softly. "Truth first." She nodded, stepping into the light, voices rising in murmurs, then silence. "I financed the horrors, my brother's rights. But I'm paying now." A widow spat, then paused, seeing tears genuine. "My husband's watch, found in the depths, returned. All we salvaged." Holmes hung back with Watson, the air heavy with pipe smoke and unspoken bonds. "You've changed," Holmes murmured Watson. "No cocaine rush for this victory. Perhaps reason finds faith in fellowship. But Reginald's shadow looms, his final test, for all of us." As amends unfolded in halting words and handed relics, a low hum vibrated from the maze's core, faint but insistent, not dead, stirring. And in the distance, a ship's horn wailed from the docks, Reginald's vessel slipping its moorings into the fog. Holmes's pulse quickened. The trader fled, but carried the spark. To chase him meant leaving the fragile healing here, or risk it all reigniting afar. Watson's hand steadied him. Together, always. Yet as the sun pierced the mist, gilding the Thames gold, Holmes wondered if redemption's true maze lay not in hedges, but the soul's uncharted twists, where grace met grit, and one man's vice could doom multitudes. The hum grew, calling them back. Holmes gripped the rusted iron of the Vauxhall gates, the metal cold and slick under his palms, as the hum from the maze deepened into a resonant throb that vibrated through the cobblestones. Families clustered under the pavilion's frayed canopy, their faces a mosaic of tentative relief, fracturing into fresh alarm. relics clutched like talismans, watches ticking with borrowed time. Lady Evelyn Thorne stood at the centre, her emerald eyes scanning the crowd, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I hid the ledgers, the shipments from the colonies that fed this abomination. My brother's folly, Reginald's greed, but I profited in the shadows. A murmur rippled through the group, not rage but weary recognition. Mary Morstan, Eliza's mother, stepped forward, her shawl drawn tight against the damp Thames wind. And my girl, the one whose laughter echoed here before the fog took her. Thorne's porcelain features cracked, a single tear carving a path through powder. She's gone. But these, your husband's pipe, Eliza's locket, pulled from the pits. No more lies. Watson shifted beside Holmes, his limp more pronounced in the chill, revolver heavy in his coat pocket. The doctor's blue eyes flicked to the maze's looming silhouette, hedges black as ink against the gilded dawn. Holmes, that sound, it's not the wind. Reginald's machine, whatever infernal contraption he built beneath, it stirs like a beast rousing from slumber. Holmes nodded, his aquiline nose flaring as he inhaled the briny rot of the river, mingled with the acrid tang of spent gas lamps. His mind raced, synapses firing without the cocaine's haze, piecing fragments, the coded manifests from Reginald's docks, crates marked for exotic flora that masked brass gears and alchemical vials. The traders' rites weren't mere theatre. They channeled the Thames undercurrents, the garden's ancient pagan veins, into a hunger that devoured the lost. 63 souls, not ghosts but fuel for Reginald's delusion of immortality, siphoning life through the maze's twisting heart. Yet as Thorne distributed the salvaged keepsakes, a father's spectacles fogged with river mud, a mother's brooch etched with initials, Holmes felt a pull deeper than deduction. These people, hollowed by grief, rebuilt in halting forgiveness. Thorne, once venomous seductress, now exposed, her corset no armor against vulnerability. Her arc mirrored his own, intellect bent to vice, now clawing toward light. Enough amends here, Holmes said softly to Watson. Reginald sails with the blueprint. If he rebuilds in Calcutta or Cairo, the cycle renews. Souls vanish anew. Watson's mustache twitched, kind eyes hardening with resolve. And abandon these families. The church circle's broth warms them now, but that hum promises terror. Thorne overheard, turning sharply, raven hair disheveled under her veiled hat. My brother, he believes the machine grants eternity, drawing from the weak-willed. Opium visions convinced him the gardens were a portal. I funded it to control him, but it controls us all. Holmes's grey eyes pierced her. Your ledgers named accomplices. The vicar from Lambeth, the docker who sealed the pits. Testimonies for Scotland Yard. She hesitated, crimson lips parting. Yes, but chase him first. End it. The group parted as Holmes, Watson and Thorne hurried toward a waiting hansom cab, hooves clattering on wet stone. Families watched, whispers blending with the rising hum, hope laced with dread. Inside the carriage, jolting over South Bank bridges, Holmes's mind churned. His own frailty haunted him, the 7% solution syringe. Idle hours at Baker Street dissolved in chemical fog. Watson had pulled him back countless times, loyal anchor. Now fellowship extended. Thorne's confession a bridge from enmity to alliance. The Thames gleamed below, fog tendrils coiling like serpents. Reginald's ship, the Erebus Star, listed at the Pool of London docks, gangplank retracting as stevedores cast off lines. Holmes leaped from the cab before it halted, Inverness Cape billowing, deerstalker shadowing his gaunt face. Watson and Thorne followed, breath ragged. "Reginald!" Holmes bellowed, voice cutting the morning clamour of gulls and cranes. At the rail, a wiry man in oilskins turned, Reginald Thorne, mid-40s, sallow skin stretched over sharp cheekbones, yellowed teeth flashing in a feral grin. Brother to Evelyn, tempter incarnate, his eyes burned with fanatic gleam. Ah, the detective, come to witness ascension? The ship's horn blasted, paddle wheels churning froth. Thorne shoved past Holmes, emerald eyes blazing. Brother, the machine failed. 63 lives, innocence twisted into ether. Stop this madness. Reginald laughed, a hollow bark echoing over the water. Failed? It evolves. The gardens were cradle, the seas will birth it anew. Frailty feeds it, addicts, grievers, the lost, like you, Evelyn, like him. He jabbed a finger at Holmes. Cocaine's disciple, chasing highs in puzzles. Holmes's pulse thundered, the barb striking true. Memories flooded. Baker Street lamplit, needles prick, euphoria's false clarity. But Watson's hand on his shoulder grounded him now, as it had then. Your rites mock science and spirit alike, Reginald. Alchemical rot, pagan echoes amplified by gears. The maze's pits held bones, not portals. The gangplank swung away, gap widening. Reginald leaned over, voice oily. Join me, or watch London starve for souls. The hum calls you. From Vauxhall, distant but insistent. The vibration pulsed in Holmes's chest, a siren's lure to his darker urges. Temptation incarnate, Reginald embodied the vice he fought, intellectual pride masking despair. Yet Thorne's plea hung raw. He's my blood. Redeem him or end him. Watson drew his revolver, steady despite the limp. Stand down, Thorne. Holmes, we pursue by rail to Portsmouth. Intercept the liner. But Holmes paused. Grey eyes narrowing on the ship's hold, crates shifting, a faint glow seeping from seams, blue fire like the maze's core. The machine lived, symbiotic with Reginald's will. Chase it, and risk unleashing horror abroad. Ignore, and Vauxhall reignites. Thorne clutched Holmes's arm, vulnerability stripping her sultry facade. I see it now, the wreckage I wrought. Grace isn't free. It demands pursuit. Like your Watson sees in you. Holmes nodded, transformation etching deeper. Reason alone faltered in fog. Fellowship illuminated. Signal the harbour master, Watson. Delay that vessel. As dockhands scrambled, whistles piercing the air, Reginald's grin faltered. The Erebus star shuddered, paddle wheels slowing against their will. But from the hold, the hum swelled. Brass groaning like awakening leviathan. Blue light flared, casting eldritch shadows on the Thames. Holmes's mind whirled. Blueprints in Reginald's cabin, rituals etched in journals. The final test loomed. Dismantle the heart, or watch redemption unravel. Thorne's hand trembled in his. Together? The ship's deck cracked, fissures glowing. Reginald staggered, eyes widening in terror. No, it's hungry. Watson fired a warning shot skyward, bang echoing. Holmes vaulted a crate, cape snapping. The chase breached the soul's maze now, grace and grit colliding amid the roar. Yet as Thorne whispered a prayer from Lambeth's hymns, unbidden, raw, the light bent, not devouring but revealing. Reginald's form silhouetted, not God but man, frail and cornered. The confrontation beckoned. Thames witness to one last twist, where vice met mercy's edge. The deck of the Erebus star heaved underfoot as the Thames churned black and oily beneath its hull, the river's current pulling like fingers greedy for secrets. Holmes gripped the railing, his gaunt frame taut against the wind whipping his Inverness cape. Grey eyes locked on the fissures cracking open amidships. Blue light pulsed from them, not the steady glow of gas lamps but a living throb, veined with shadows that twisted like smoke from an opium pipe. Reginald Thorne staggered at the hold's mouth, his once aristocratic face gaunt and slick with sweat, eyes wild not with triumph, but a dawning horror that mirrored the detective's own buried fears. Evelyn Thorne pressed close to Holmes, her crimson lips parted in that raw prayer still echoing from Lambeth's shadowed chapels, words she'd mocked in her days of silk and scandal, now clawing free from some forgotten grace. Her hand, trembling yet firm, squeezed his arm. He's breaking, Holmes. Not the machine, him. See it. Watson flanked them, revolver steady in his stocky grip, the limp forgotten in the adrenaline surge that always masked his Afghan go.